Albert entered this new stage of schooling with a mixture of curiosity and quiet apprehension. He was eager to learn, but he sensed instantly that the classroom demanded a rhythm far quicker than the one he naturally followed. Teachers expected rapid answers and sharp recall, valuing speed over depth and memorization over understanding. Albert, however, needed time to think, time to process, time to feel the shape of an idea before responding. This gentle pace made him stand out in a system built for uniformity rather than individuality. The school environment in Munich was strict, driven by a philosophy that placed discipline at the center of education. Students sat in neat rows, recited lessons aloud, and moved through the day according to the rigid structure of bells and commands. Albert found himself resisting this structure quietly, not out of rebellion, but because it did not align with the way his mind naturally worked. His curiosity did not follow schedules, and his thoughts could not be hurried. He began to understand, slowly and silently, that he would need to learn in his own way, even while seated in a classroom that insisted he learn like everyone else. Despite the strictness, Albert tried his best to adapt, hoping he could find a rhythm that allowed him to flourish. But his mind wandered often, not toward distraction, but toward deeper layers of the lessons being taught. When taught arithmetic, he wondered why the operations worked the way they did, rather than simply performing them. When introduced to scientific facts, he questioned what invisible rules governed them. This deeper engagement made him appear unfocused in the eyes of his teachers, even though he was thinking more deeply than most students around him. His quiet nature simply concealed the depth of his inner world. Albert's teachers, trained to value speed and obedience, often misinterpreted his silence. They assumed he was disengaged when, in truth, he was reflecting. They believed he lacked drive when, in reality, he was exploring ideas more profoundly than expected. Their evaluations sometimes stung, but Albert rarely reacted. Instead, he held his thoughts close, letting them form in the privacy of his mind. This early misunderstanding between him and his teachers planted the first seeds of his lifelong skepticism toward rigid authority. Still, not every moment in school felt heavy or restrictive. There were subjects where Albert felt his mind light up with excitement, particularly in mathematics and the natural sciences. These subjects offered him clarity and structure that felt soothing. Mathematical equations moved with a kind of calm logic, and the puzzles they presented invited patient exploration rather than quick responses. Albert cherished these lessons, seeing them as small islands of freedom in an otherwise rigid academic landscape. These moments reassured him that his mind had a place where it could breathe. At home, Albert found comfort in the supportive environment his family created. His parents, understanding his thoughtful nature, did not pressure him to perform in school the way others might have. Instead, they encouraged him to learn at his own pace, providing him with books, tools, and quiet spaces where he could think. His mother played piano in the evenings, filling the apartment with soft melodies that eased the tension of the day. These musical interludes helped Albert settle, reminding him that life held beauty beyond the classroom's expectations. One of the most influential figures in Albert's early learning remained his uncle Jacob, who visited frequently. Jacob recognized the spark in Albert and nurtured it with warm conversations and simple challenges. He introduced Albert to more advanced mathematical ideas, encouraging him to explore beyond what the school curriculum allowed. Albert approached these lessons with quiet excitement, feeling validated and understood in ways that rarely happened in the classroom. These moments strengthened his love for learning and helped him trust his own intellectual instincts. As the months passed, Albert grew more aware of the pressure that schooling placed on children his age. Expectations were high, and success was often measured by conformity rather than comprehension. Many students adapted easily, moving through exercises and recitations without question. Albert could not help but notice that he learned differently. His curiosity was gentle but persistent, and it did not fade under pressure. Instead, the pressure only made him more aware that true understanding required freedom to think, to question, and to follow ideas in their own natural direction. Albert's struggles with memorization-based subjects became more noticeable during this period. History lessons, filled with dates and names, did not capture his interest. Language classes demanded repetition rather than insight. These subjects felt heavy to him, lacking the clarity he found in mathematics and science. Yet he persisted, working through his assignments with quiet determination. He accepted that some subjects came easily while others required patience. His willingness to embrace this balance showed a maturity beyond his years. During weekends, Albert often took long walks through the city, using the time to think through questions that lingered in his mind. He observed the way shadows changed as the sun moved, the way reflections danced on water, and the way sounds echoed through narrow streets. These observations, though simple, filled him with a sense of wonder. Nature seemed to speak a language he instinctively understood, a language of patterns, rhythms, and subtle rules. These gentle discoveries nurtured his curiosity, reminding him that learning did not end when he left the classroom. Touching on his introspective nature, Albert often felt more connected to ideas than to social interactions. While he had a few close friends, he was not naturally outgoing. Noise and large groups sometimes overwhelmed him, pushing him back into the comfort of solitude. But solitude never felt lonely for him. It was where his mind felt most free, where ideas flowed without interruption. This comfort with his inner world played a crucial role in shaping the thinker he would become. Albert's teachers occasionally misunderstood this solitude, interpreting it as withdrawal rather than contemplation. They sometimes encouraged him to be more engaged, more responsive, more outwardly attentive. Albert listened politely but rarely changed his behavior, sensing that his true strength lay in his inner calm. He did not force himself to become someone he was not. Instead, he learned to navigate the expectations of school while preserving the quiet space inside his mind where ideas could grow. Throughout this period, Albert's curiosity about invisible forces deepened. He wondered more frequently about the nature of light, the behavior of energy, and the patterns that seemed to exist beneath the surface of everyday life. He began sketching small diagrams in his notebooks, not as assignments but as personal explorations. These sketches helped him think, giving form to questions he could not yet articulate. Though the drawings were simple, they reflected the early stages of ideas that would later reshape scientific understanding. His fascination with light grew especially strong. He noticed how light behaved differently from physical objects, how it moved, how it bent, how it changed depending on the environment. He watched sunbeams through windows, observed reflections in puddles, and studied candle flames with quiet intensity. Light seemed almost alive to him, carrying secrets he longed to uncover. These early observations became the first hints of a lifelong pursuit. Albert's parents observed his growing interest in scientific ideas with a mixture of pride and gentle amusement. They loved his curiosity but remained grounded, offering support without pushing him toward any specific path. Their home was a refuge, a quiet space where learning and relaxation blended naturally. Even on difficult school days, Albert returned to an environment where he felt safe and understood. This emotional foundation allowed him to maintain his calm and pursue his interests without fear. Financial struggles continued to ebb and flow within the Einstein household, shaping the family's daily life with careful budgeting and modest choices. Albert understood these challenges, sensing the weight his parents carried. Their quiet resilience taught him that life required patience and adaptability. He learned that hardship did not need to overshadow hope, and that persistence often mattered more than circumstance. These lessons would stay with him, shaping his approach to both science and life. Though school felt restrictive, Albert discovered occasional moments of genuine inspiration in the classroom. A thoughtful teacher explaining a mathematical principle, a well-worded idea in a textbook, or a small experiment performed during science lessons could spark hours of reflection. These moments revealed the depth of his engagement, showing that he was not apathetic but selectively passionate. He gravitated naturally toward ideas that felt meaningful, and he followed those ideas with quiet dedication. Albert also began developing a sense of personal philosophy during this period. He sensed that true understanding required both freedom and discipline. He saw that curiosity needed direction, but not constraint. He realized that questions were valuable even when answers were not immediately available. This philosophy gave him a sense of peace as he navigated the complexities of schooling. It helped him remain patient and grounded, even when expectations felt overwhelming. Despite the challenges, Albert's love for mathematics continued to grow. He often worked through problems at home long after school had ended, exploring different methods and solutions. The structure of mathematics brought him comfort, like a steady rhythm that made sense even when the world felt confusing. He found joy in discovering new relationships between numbers and shapes, and he cherished the clarity that came from solving a difficult problem. Mathematics became a quiet sanctuary for his mind. As Albert entered his adolescent years, he began to understand the importance of self-direction in learning. He realized that he could not rely solely on teachers to guide him. He needed to seek knowledge independently, following his own curiosity. This realization empowered him, giving him a sense of responsibility for his intellectual growth. It was a gentle but transformative shift, shaping the independent thinker he would become. While school demanded conformity, Albert quietly practiced his own form of rebellion, not through actions, but through thought. He questioned what others accepted, examined what others overlooked, and refused to let rigid rules define the limits of his understanding. This subtle resistance did not disrupt the classroom, but it shaped his inner world profoundly. It nurtured his originality and encouraged him to approach ideas with fresh perspectives. Through all these experiences, Albert remained deeply reflective about the nature of learning itself. He sensed that education was not merely about absorbing information, but about developing the ability to think clearly. He began to understand that true insight came not from memorization, but from connection. When the Einstein family moved to Munich, Albert was still young enough to view the world with fresh eyes. Their new apartment was small but filled with warmth, carrying the quiet simplicity that defined the Einstein household. The family's electrical engineering business had just begun to take shape, promising opportunity, but not yet offering comfort or wealth. Money was modest, and the family learned to live with the gentle discipline required by limited means. Yet Albert felt no sense of deprivation, only an atmosphere of calm practicality that suited his gentle personality well. The apartment's narrow rooms and wooden floors became familiar spaces where his imagination could wander. Albert often sat near the windowsill, watching the changing light layer itself across the streets below. He noticed how shadows lengthened slowly in the afternoon and how colors softened as evening approached. These observations were not studied. They were quiet curiosities that appeared naturally in his young mind. Unbeknownst to him, these early impressions would one day form the basis of deep reflections about light and time. Life in Munich introduced Albert to a more structured rhythm. His father and uncle worked steadily, often returning home late with stories of electrical machines, wires, and new challenges. These stories captivated him, not as dramatic tales, but as puzzles waiting to be solved. He listened with the calm attention he had always carried, absorbing ideas even when the concepts surpassed his understanding. His father noticed this thoughtful interest and repaid it gently, sharing simple explanations that nurtured Albert's growing fascination with how things worked. Although the family had limited financial resources, they valued comfort in small forms. Pauline ensured that the home remained organized and filled with music, believing that beauty could exist even in modest surroundings. She practiced piano in the evenings, her soft melodies drifting through the walls and into Albert's room. He often paused whatever he was doing to listen, letting the notes settle his thoughts. Music became a quiet refuge, a place of emotional clarity that helped him navigate the complexities of childhood. Albert's fascination with mechanical objects continued to grow during this period. He found joy in examining household items, clocks, small instruments, and even kitchen tools, studying how their parts fit together with gentle precision. He rarely broke things out of carelessness. Instead, he moved thoughtfully, as though he understood that each object held its own internal logic. His careful hands and patient nature made him unusually good at piecing things back together. This skill earned him soft admiration from family members, who saw him as both curious and gentle. At school, Albert struggled at first to adjust to the rigid environment. Teachers valued quick responses, memorization, and uniformity, traits that did not align with his thoughtful pace. He needed time to reflect before offering answers, preferring to understand deeply rather than repeat superficially. This caused some teachers to interpret him as slow or inattentive. Despite their assumptions, Albert maintained his quiet focus, choosing not to change his nature to fit their expectations. His early experiences taught him that learning was most meaningful when pursued calmly, not hurriedly. The contrast between school and home was striking for Albert. At school, he felt confined by strict instruction. At home, he found freedom in silence and exploration. His parents noticed his discomfort but trusted his resilience, offering support without intervening too forcefully. They believed he would find his way through patience rather than pressure. This belief created a gentle environment that allowed Albert to stay connected to his natural rhythm. During this time, Albert discovered the joy of reading. Books provided him a doorway into new worlds, opening up ideas that extended beyond everyday experience. He read slowly, savoring each line and allowing images to form in his mind. Stories about travelers, inventors, and scientists filled him with wonder, though it was the quiet explanatory texts, books about numbers, shapes, and natural laws, that drew him most deeply. These early readings nurtured his sense of intellectual independence. One of Albert's earliest intellectual passions was geometry. When he encountered his first geometry book, he was struck by the clarity and simplicity of the subject. He marveled at how abstract concepts could be proven with perfect certainty. The clean lines of triangles and circles soothed him, offering a sense of stability that he rarely found in other aspects of his life. He carried the book everywhere, often losing himself in its pages for long stretches of time. Geometry became a quiet companion, one that would stay with him throughout his life. At home, the Einstein family practiced modest living, shaped by careful budgeting. Their business, working with electrical lighting and power systems, faced constant market changes. Some months were prosperous, while others brought challenges that required sacrifices. Through these fluctuations, Albert learned the value of patience and gratitude. He saw how his parents adapted quietly, making the best of each situation without complaint. This stability of character left a lasting impression on him. Albert's mother continued to encourage his love for music by introducing him to the violin. At first, he approached the instrument with reluctance, finding the techniques difficult to grasp. But with time, he discovered that the violin offered a different kind of clarity. When he played, he felt a connection between sound and emotion that mirrored the connection between numbers and logic. As he practiced, he began to appreciate the gentle discipline music required. It nurtured both his creativity and his ability to focus. Life in Munich also exposed Albert to the reality of scarcity. Although the family had enough to live on, They were far from wealthy, and certain luxuries were simply out of reach. Albert learned to treat each possession with care, understanding that things could not easily be replaced. This awareness strengthened his sense of responsibility and respect for the world around him. It also helped cultivate a sense of simplicity that would stay with him throughout adulthood. Despite occasional hardships, Albert cherished the security of home. The warmth of his family and the predictable rhythms of daily life allowed him to flourish in his introspective way. He found comfort in repetition, setting his books on the same table, arranging his small belongings neatly, and returning to familiar thoughts as though they were old friends. These routines anchored him emotionally, giving his mind a stable foundation for deeper exploration. One of the most defining traits of Albert's childhood was his photographic memory for certain kinds of information. His parents noticed that he remembered long numbers, phone digits, and sequences with surprising ease. This ability did not extend to all details. He was far more comfortable recalling patterns than names or dates, but it hinted at the underlying structure of his mind, which sought order and connection rather than isolated facts. It was another quiet sign of the thinker he was becoming. Albert's growing awareness of the world extended beyond objects and numbers. He began to observe people with gentle curiosity, noticing the rhythm of their habits, the tone of their voices, and the subtle ways they expressed emotion. He was not outgoing, but he was attentive. He learned more through watching than through participating, gathering insights silently while others interacted around him. This observational nature would later help him approach scientific problems with fresh perspectives. During his early years in Munich, the Einstein household sometimes hosted visiting friends and business partners. These gatherings offered Albert a chance to listen to adult conversations filled with technical discussions about electricity, engineering, and the future of lighting. He absorbed these conversations quietly, storing impressions that would surface in his thinking years later. Though he rarely spoke, his presence at the table was welcomed with affection. His family recognized his depth of thought, even if they did not yet understand its future significance. Albert's experiences with scarcity also brought humility. He understood that his parents worked hard to give him and his sister a stable life. Their sacrifices taught him gratitude, and he learned to appreciate small joys rather than longing for grand luxuries. This groundedness remained a defining part of his character, preventing fame and recognition from altering his sense of self later in life. He remained, at his core, the same quiet boy who found wonder in simple things. The family's modest lifestyle also influenced Albert's developing worldview. He learned early that external circumstances did not determine inner richness. Meaning came from curiosity, not from possessions. Peace came from thoughtful reflection, not from comfort. These values gave him a sense of independence, allowing him to define fulfillment on his own terms. They also laid the foundation for the life of contemplation he would later embrace in Princeton. Throughout his childhood, Albert often retreated to a quiet corner of the apartment to ponder ideas that fascinated him. He liked to imagine beams of light traveling through space, waves of energy moving silently across invisible fields, and the mysterious push and pull of forces that shape the world. These were not formal scientific questions yet. They were gentle curiosities, glimpses of patterns that stirred something deep inside him. He would revisit these ideas years later when they transformed into groundbreaking theories. As he grew older, Albert began to understand that his quiet nature set him apart. Other children played loudly, raced through the streets, and embraced noise with enthusiasm. Albert preferred stillness. He would walk slowly, pause frequently, and observe details others overlooked. This difference occasionally created distance between him and peers, but it did not trouble him deeply. He found companionship in his thoughts, in music, and in the few close friendships he gradually formed. The school environment in Munich challenged Albert, but not academically. The rigidity of the lessons clashed with his need to explore ideas freely. Teachers expected obedience and quick responses, while Albert required space to think. He learned early that deep understanding emerged from patience, not pressure. This conflict between freedom and structure would later shape his skepticism toward authority, especially in academic settings. Albert often felt that his true learning happened outside of school in the quiet moments of the day. Whether he was observing the dance of sunlight through the trees or contemplating the properties of shapes, he felt most alive when thinking for himself. These internal explorations strengthened his confidence in his own mind. He trusted his intuition, even when it diverged from conventional teaching, planting the seeds of his later originality. Despite his introspective nature, Albert was affectionate with his family. He expressed his love not through words but through quiet gestures, helping his sister with her toys, sharing small discoveries with his parents, or sitting close during musical evenings. These moments of closeness created strong family bonds, grounding him emotionally in a world that often felt rigid and demanding. His family became his refuge, the place where he could be fully himself. As Albert approached his teenage years, the Einstein family faced growing financial uncertainty. Their business struggled, and tension occasionally filled the home, though his parents tried to shield him from the worst of it. Albert sensed their worry but remained calm, responding with the emotional steadiness he had developed through years of quiet observation. These hardships taught him resilience and a sense of inner stability that would remain with him for life. Albert's quiet relationship with the world deepened during this period. He found that even during difficult times, there was beauty to be discovered in ordinary moments. A cool morning breeze, the warm glow of lamplight, or the soft rhythm of his mother's music all offered comfort and perspective. These small rituals reminded him that the world held gentle truths alongside its challenges. This balance gave him hope and strengthened his desire to understand the forces that shape the universe. As his curiosity expanded, Albert became increasingly interested in the idea of invisible structures. He wondered how something unseen could influence the physical world, like the compass needle that never left his mind. He thought about how forces moved through space and how light traveled across vast distances. These early questions did not yet resemble the formal theories he would later develop, but they were the seeds of his scientific identity. He began to sense that hidden patterns governed everything. During this time, the family's living conditions remained modest. Their apartment, though warm, was small and occasionally crowded with the tools and equipment of the family business. Albert often found himself surrounded by coils of wire, metal rods, and heavy batteries. These materials were familiar to him, forming part of the backdrop of his childhood. Their presence encouraged him to examine electricity and magnetism with growing fascination. In this environment of scarcity, curiosity, and gentle family love, the foundation of Albert Einstein's mind solidified in a deeply human way. He grew not through force or external pressure, but through quiet exploration and soft wonder. His life in Munich shaped his earliest thinking, allowing him to develop clarity, patience, and emotional depth long before he encountered formal scientific challenges. These traits would become essential as he moved into the next stage of his journey. The child who once stared at a compass needle with awe now carried that same sense of wonder into every corner of his life. And soon, as he entered school years more deeply, the world would begin to show him new puzzles, new questions, and new paths to explore, quietly, steadily, and at his own thoughtful pace. Albert entered this new stage of schooling with a mixture of curiosity and quiet apprehension. He was eager to learn, but he sensed instantly that the classroom demanded a rhythm far quicker than the one he naturally followed. Teachers expected rapid answers and sharp recall, valuing speed over depth and memorization over understanding. Albert, however, needed time to think, time to process, time to feel the shape of an idea before responding. This gentle pace made him stand out in a system built for uniformity rather than individuality. The school environment in Munich was strict, driven by a philosophy that placed discipline at the center of education. Students sat in neat rows, recited lessons aloud, and moved through the day according to the rigid structure of bells and commands. Albert found himself resisting this structure quietly, not out of rebellion, but because it did not align with the way his mind naturally worked. His curiosity did not follow schedules, and his thoughts could not be hurried. He began to understand, slowly and silently, that he would need to learn in his own way, even while seated in a classroom that insisted he learn like everyone else. Despite the strictness, Albert tried his best to adapt, hoping he could find a rhythm that allowed him to flourish. But his mind wandered often, not toward distraction, but toward deeper layers of the lessons being taught. When taught arithmetic, he wondered why the operations worked the way they did, rather than simply performing them. When introduced to scientific facts, he questioned what invisible rules governed them. This deeper engagement made him appear unfocused in the eyes of his teachers, even though he was thinking more deeply than most students around him. His quiet nature simply concealed the depth of his inner world. Albert's teachers, trained to value speed and obedience, often misinterpreted his silence. They assumed he was disengaged when, in truth, he was reflecting. They believed he lacked drive when, in reality, he was exploring ideas more profoundly than expected. Their evaluations sometimes stung, but Albert rarely reacted. Instead, he held his thoughts close, letting them form in the privacy of his mind. This early misunderstanding between him and his teachers planted the first seeds of his lifelong skepticism toward rigid authority. Still, not every moment in school felt heavy or restrictive. There were subjects where Albert felt his mind light up with excitement, particularly in mathematics and the natural sciences. These subjects offered him clarity and structure that felt soothing. Mathematical equations moved with a kind of calm logic, and the puzzles they presented invited patient exploration rather than quick responses. Albert cherished these lessons, seeing them as small islands of freedom in an otherwise rigid academic landscape. These moments reassured him that his mind had a place where it could breathe. At home, Albert found comfort in the supportive environment his family created. His parents, understanding his thoughtful nature, did not pressure him to perform in school the way others might have. Instead, they encouraged him to learn at his own pace, providing him with books, tools, and quiet spaces where he could think. His mother played piano in the evenings, filling the apartment with soft melodies that eased the tension of the day. These musical interludes helped Albert settle, reminding him that life held beauty beyond the classroom's expectations. One of the most influential figures in Albert's early learning remained his uncle Jacob, who visited frequently. Jacob recognized the spark in Albert and nurtured it with warm conversations and simple challenges. He introduced Albert to more advanced mathematical ideas, encouraging him to explore beyond what the school curriculum allowed. Albert approached these lessons with quiet excitement, feeling validated and understood in ways that rarely happened in the classroom. These moments strengthened his love for learning and helped him trust his own intellectual instincts. As the months passed, Albert grew more aware of the pressure that schooling placed on children his age. Expectations were high, and success was often measured by conformity rather than comprehension. Many students adapted easily, moving through exercises and recitations without question. Albert could not help but notice that he learned differently. His curiosity was gentle but persistent, and it did not fade under pressure. Instead, the pressure only made him more aware that true understanding required freedom to think, to question, and to follow ideas in their own natural direction. Albert's struggles with memorization-based subjects became more noticeable during this period. History lessons, filled with dates and names, did not capture his interest. Language classes demanded repetition rather than insight. These subjects felt heavy to him, lacking the clarity he found in mathematics and science. Yet he persisted, working through his assignments with quiet determination. He accepted that some subjects came easily while others required patience. His willingness to embrace this balance showed a maturity beyond his years. During weekends, Albert often took long walks through the city, using the time to think through questions that lingered in his mind. He observed the way shadows changed as the sun moved, the way reflections danced on water, and the way sounds echoed through narrow streets. These observations, though simple, filled him with a sense of wonder. Nature seemed to speak a language he instinctively understood, a language of patterns, rhythms, and subtle rules. These gentle discoveries nurtured his curiosity, reminding him that learning did not end when he left the classroom. Touching on his introspective nature, Albert often felt more connected to ideas than to social interactions. While he had a few close friends, he was not naturally outgoing. Noise and large groups sometimes overwhelmed him, pushing him back into the comfort of solitude. But solitude never felt lonely for him. It was where his mind felt most free, where ideas flowed without interruption. This comfort with his inner world played a crucial role in shaping the thinker he would become. Albert's teachers occasionally misunderstood this solitude, interpreting it as withdrawal rather than contemplation. They sometimes encouraged him to be more engaged, more responsive, more outwardly attentive. Albert listened politely but rarely changed his behavior, sensing that his true strength lay in his inner calm. He did not force himself to become someone he was not. Instead, he learned to navigate the expectations of school while preserving the quiet space inside his mind where ideas could grow. Throughout this period, Albert's curiosity about invisible forces deepened. He wondered more frequently about the nature of light, the behavior of energy, and the patterns that seemed to exist beneath the surface of everyday life. He began sketching small diagrams in his notebooks, not as assignments but as personal explorations. These sketches helped him think, giving form to questions he could not yet articulate. Though the drawings were simple, they reflected the early stages of ideas that would later reshape scientific understanding. His fascination with light grew especially strong. He noticed how light behaved differently from physical objects, how it moved, how it bent, how it changed depending on the environment. He watched sunbeams through windows, observed reflections in puddles, and studied candle flames with quiet intensity. Light seemed almost alive to him, carrying secrets he longed to uncover. These early observations became the first hints of a lifelong pursuit. Albert's parents observed his growing interest in scientific ideas with a mixture of pride and gentle amusement. They loved his curiosity but remained grounded, offering support without pushing him toward any specific path. Their home was a refuge, a quiet space where learning and relaxation blended naturally. Even on difficult school days, Albert returned to an environment where he felt safe and understood. This emotional foundation allowed him to maintain his calm and pursue his interests without fear. Financial struggles continued to ebb and flow within the Einstein household, shaping the family's daily life with careful budgeting and modest choices. Albert understood these challenges, sensing the weight his parents carried. Their quiet resilience taught him that life required patience and adaptability. He learned that hardship did not need to overshadow hope, and that persistence often mattered more than circumstance. These lessons would stay with him, shaping his approach to both science and life. Though school felt restrictive, Albert discovered occasional moments of genuine inspiration in the classroom. A thoughtful teacher explaining a mathematical principle, a well-worded idea in a textbook, or a small experiment performed during science lessons could spark hours of reflection. These moments revealed the depth of his engagement, showing that he was not apathetic but selectively passionate. He gravitated naturally toward ideas that felt meaningful, and he followed those ideas with quiet dedication. Albert also began developing a sense of personal philosophy during this period. He sensed that true understanding required both freedom and discipline. He saw that curiosity needed direction, but not constraint. He realized that questions were valuable even when answers were not immediately available. This philosophy gave him a sense of peace as he navigated the complexities of schooling. It helped him remain patient and grounded, even when expectations felt overwhelming. Despite the challenges, Albert's love for mathematics continued to grow. He often worked through problems at home long after school had ended, exploring different methods and solutions. The structure of mathematics brought him comfort, like a steady rhythm that made sense even when the world felt confusing. He found joy in discovering new relationships between numbers and shapes, and he cherished the clarity that came from solving a difficult problem. Mathematics became a quiet sanctuary for his mind. As Albert entered his adolescent years, he began to understand the importance of self-direction in learning. He realized that he could not rely solely on teachers to guide him. He needed to seek knowledge independently, following his own curiosity. This realization empowered him, giving him a sense of responsibility for his intellectual growth. It was a gentle but transformative shift, shaping the independent thinker he would become. While school demanded conformity, Albert quietly practiced his own form of rebellion, not through actions, but through thought. He questioned what others accepted, examined what others overlooked, and refused to let rigid rules define the limits of his understanding. This subtle resistance did not disrupt the classroom, but it shaped his inner world profoundly. It nurtured his originality and encouraged him to approach ideas with fresh perspectives. Through all these experiences, Albert remained deeply reflective about the nature of learning itself. He sensed that education was not merely about absorbing information, but about developing the ability to think clearly. He began to understand that true insight came not from memorization, but from connection. This belief became the foundation of his intellectual identity, influencing every discovery he would later make. As this stage of schooling drew toward its close, Albert carried with him a mind shaped not by the rigid expectations of teachers, but by the quiet persistence of his own curiosity. His thoughts had grown deeper, his questions more refined, and his sense of self more grounded. He still felt the weight of external pressure, but he had learned to navigate it with grace and patience. His inner world had become a steady companion, guiding him gently through each new challenge. The quiet child who once studied a compass with wonder had grown into a thoughtful young student navigating a system that did not quite fit him. Yet his curiosity remained intact, shining softly through every moment of doubt and pressure. That curiosity, patient and unwavering, was beginning to take shape as something more, a quiet force that would soon lead him into new experiences, deeper questions, and the first major turning points of his life. And as he stepped quietly toward the next chapter of learning, a subtle shift began to take place. His world was about to widen beyond the walls of the Munich classroom, offering him new landscapes for his mind to explore. New influences, new challenges, and new opportunities waited just beyond the horizon. They would meet him softly, one by one, guiding him toward the ideas that would one day change the way humanity understood reality itself. As Albert moved further through his schooling years, he began to sense a shift inside himself. The rigid patterns of the classroom no longer frustrated him in the same way they once had. Instead, he started to recognize that learning existed in layers and that not all layers needed to come from school. He realized that understanding could unfold quietly whenever he allowed his mind the space to wander freely. This gentle acceptance helped him navigate the demands of his education with more peace. During this period, Albert's curiosity expanded beyond mathematics into broader scientific questions. He wondered how heat behaved, how movement translated into energy, and why certain natural processes followed predictable patterns. These were not questions assigned to him. They emerged from a growing desire to see the world more clearly. He felt drawn toward the invisible mechanisms that structured reality, sensing that understanding them would unlock deeper truths. This quiet urge became a steady presence in his thoughts. Outside the classroom, Albert gradually found himself forming intellectual friendships that nourished his developing ideas. These friendships were small in number, but rich in meaning. His closest companions were fellow students who also asked questions quietly, preferring slow conversations over loud debates. They exchanged thoughts about science, philosophy, and the small mysteries of daily life. These shared reflections created an atmosphere of gentle companionship that Albert treasured deeply. Among these classmates, Albert met a few mentors who influenced him in subtle but important ways. One older student introduced him to advanced physics texts that opened entirely new pathways of understanding. Another encouraged Albert to explore the connection between mathematics and physical laws, showing him how equations could describe the behavior of the world. These mentors did not impose rigid lessons. They simply guided Albert toward ideas that resonated with his inner nature. Their influence marked the beginning of a more intentional intellectual journey. As Albert progressed, he began to understand the value of humility in learning. He recognized that even the brightest minds did not have all the answers, and that true insight required patience and openness. He observed that many students hurried through their studies, seeking grades and recognition. Albert, however, felt no urgency to prove himself. He preferred to master ideas slowly, returning to them repeatedly until they felt clear and grounded. This calm approach became one of his greatest strengths. His growing interest in scientific thought led him to spend long hours reading books far beyond his grade level. He devoured works on physics and mathematics, letting the concepts settle in his mind with time and repetition. He often read late into the night, absorbing ideas until fatigue gently carried him into sleep. These quiet evenings spent in thought deepened his connection to the world of science. They allowed him to see learning as both a discipline and a form of comfort. During this stage of his life, Albert developed a strong admiration for certain thinkers whose ideas shaped his worldview. Among them were scientists and philosophers who approached knowledge with curiosity rather than authority. He felt drawn to individuals who questioned assumptions and sought deeper principles behind observable facts. This admiration strengthened his desire to follow a similar path. He sensed that the world needed more thinkers who approached understanding with patience and wonder. Albert's relationship with his teachers remained a mixture of respect and quiet disagreement. While he admired their dedication to education, he struggled with the rigid structure they imposed. Some of them appreciated his depth of thought, while others misinterpreted his quiet nature as lack of engagement. Still, Albert maintained his gentle demeanor, choosing to listen quietly rather than challenge authority openly. He understood that each teacher offered him something valuable, even if their methods did not always align with his learning style. As he matured academically, Albert found himself increasingly drawn to the world beyond textbooks. He wanted to understand not only mathematical principles, but the broader meaning behind them. He wondered how physical phenomena connected to the laws of nature and how abstract theories could describe real events. This desire for deeper connection gave his studies a sense of purpose. It transformed learning from an obligation into a journey of discovery. Albert also began experimenting with thought experiments during this time. These mental explorations allowed him to imagine scenarios that would be difficult to recreate physically. He would picture himself traveling alongside beams of light, or imagine how objects might behave under different conditions. These quiet exercises strengthened his ability to visualize ideas with remarkable clarity. They also offered him a way to explore concepts independently, free from the constraints of formal experimentation. In the circle of his friendships, Albert often played the role of the quiet observer. He listened closely to discussions, adding insights only when he felt they added genuine clarity. His friends appreciated this quality, seeing in him someone whose words carried depth rather than impulse. These small interactions helped Albert understand the value of measured thought. They showed him that silence could be a form of wisdom, not a sign of disengagement. Meanwhile, life at home remained a gentle anchor for Albert. His parents continued to support his studies, offering him encouragement without expectation. His mother's music remained a steady presence, filling the home with tones that soothed his mind. His father's quiet determination inspired Albert to persevere in moments of doubt. These simple moments offered him emotional comfort during a time when academic pressures were growing. As Albert entered his later school years, he began to sense that his path would lead him beyond Munich. He felt a quiet restlessness, a sense that the next stage of his life would unfold somewhere else. The world felt larger than the familiar streets and schoolrooms he knew so well. This sense of widening possibility excited him gently, stirring his curiosity about the future. He began to imagine the kind of environments where he might thrive more fully. During this time, Albert's confidence in his abilities grew steadily. He no longer measured his progress by teachers' expectations or classmates' achievements. Instead, he looked inward, assessing his growth by the clarity of his understanding. This shift gave him a sense of independence. It reassured him that he could shape his own path without relying solely on external validation. While some classmates focused on preparing for traditional careers, Albert's mind drifted toward questions that felt far larger. He wondered how time moved, how space stretched, and what forces governed the motion of the universe. These questions were not part of the curriculum, but they captivated him more deeply than any formal lesson. He sensed that the answers lay somewhere beyond the limits of current knowledge. This intuition would later become the driving force behind his most significant discoveries. At the same time, Albert developed a growing awareness of the importance of discipline. He realized that curiosity alone was not enough to understand complex ideas. He needed perseverance, focus, and a willingness to revisit concepts many times. This understanding matured within him gradually, shaping his approach to learning in meaningful ways. He cultivated a gentle discipline that balanced exploration with structure. Albert's relationship with mathematics grew stronger as he encountered more advanced topics. He felt wonder at the elegance of equations that described natural phenomena. He loved how mathematics revealed hidden patterns that existed beneath the surface of the world. This deepening passion made him feel more connected to the universe. It gave him the sense that he was uncovering small pieces of a much larger puzzle. His growing proficiency in scientific subjects did not make his school life easier, however. Some teachers continued to view him through the lens of traditional expectations. They did not always understand his quiet resistance to rote learning, misinterpreting it as stubbornness. Yet Albert remained composed, choosing not to internalize their criticisms. He knew that his learning path was different. He trusted that it would lead him where he needed to go. As he approached the end of this phase of schooling, Albert found himself reflecting more deeply on the meaning of education. He recognized that true learning was not about passing exams, but about cultivating the ability to think clearly. He began to see that the most valuable lessons were often those that emerged slowly, through repeated reflection. This realization strengthened his commitment to his own quiet method of understanding. His intellectual friendships continued to support him as he prepared for the next stage of life. These companions shared books, ideas, and quiet moments of insight that helped Albert grow. They encouraged him subtly, recognizing the depth of his thinking even when he doubted himself. Their presence provided a sense of community that balanced the solitude he often sought. Together, they created a small world where thoughtfulness was valued. At home, Albert's mother and father sensed that change was coming. They saw him growing more independent, more focused, and more attuned to his inner world. They supported him with a mix of pride and gentle caution, knowing that the future held both opportunities and challenges. Their quiet confidence helped Albert feel ready to take the next steps. He understood that his family would always be a source of comfort, even as he moved forward. During this period, Albert found himself contemplating his future more often. He thought about the kind of environment where he might flourish. He imagined places where creativity was encouraged and where he could explore ideas without constraint. These thoughts filled him with a sense of anticipation. He felt ready, not in a loud or dramatic way, but with a quiet certainty. Albert's fascination with the natural world continued to deepen. He observed the behavior of light with growing interest, noting how it shifted, scattered, and reflected. He wondered what governed these behaviors and whether the answers lay within mathematics or something even deeper. These gentle reflections hinted at the direction his mind was beginning to take. They marked the beginning of a path that would eventually redefine physics. As he prepared to leave this stage of his education behind, Albert felt a mixture of gratitude and readiness. He appreciated the lessons he had learned, both in and out of the classroom. He recognized the value of the challenges he faced, and he knew that each experience had helped shape the person he was becoming. With this quiet understanding, he felt prepared to step forward. By now, Albert had grown into a young man with a mind shaped by patience, curiosity, and a deep love for understanding. He had learned to trust his instincts, to value clarity, and to respect the slow unfolding of knowledge. The rigid school system had not changed him. Instead, he had learned to move within it while nurturing his own intellectual identity. This delicate balance prepared him for the next chapter of learning that waited ahead. As this stage of his schooling came to a gentle close, Albert's inner world felt more grounded than ever. His questions were becoming clearer, his curiosity stronger, and his sense of purpose quietly taking form. He knew that the world beyond Munich held opportunities he had yet to imagine. With a calm heart and a thoughtful mind, he prepared to step forward into whatever came next. And in this quiet transition, a new horizon slowly began to appear. It carried with it new ideas, new teachers, and new challenges that would guide Albert toward the deeper questions that awaited him. Step by step, the gentle journey that had begun in childhood was leading him toward the discoveries that would one day reshape the boundaries of human understanding. Albert entered this new stage of schooling with a mixture of curiosity and quiet apprehension. He was eager to learn, but he sensed instantly that the classroom demanded a rhythm far quicker than the one he naturally followed. Teachers expected rapid answers and sharp recall, valuing speed over depth and memorization over understanding. Albert, however, needed time to think, time to process, time to feel the shape of an idea before responding. This gentle pace made him stand out in a system built for uniformity rather than individuality. The school environment in Munich was strict, driven by a philosophy that placed discipline at the center of education. Students sat in neat rows, recited lessons aloud, and moved through the day according to the rigid structure of bells and commands. Albert found himself resisting this structure quietly, not out of rebellion, but because it did not align with the way his mind naturally worked. His curiosity did not follow schedules, and his thoughts could not be hurried. He began to understand, slowly and silently, that he would need to learn in his own way, even while seated in a classroom that insisted he learn like everyone else. Despite the strictness, Albert tried his best to adapt, hoping he could find a rhythm that allowed him to flourish. But his mind wandered often, not toward distraction, but toward deeper layers of the lessons being taught. When taught arithmetic, he wondered why the operations worked the way they did, rather than simply performing them. When introduced to scientific facts, he questioned what invisible rules governed them. This deeper engagement made him appear unfocused in the eyes of his teachers, even though he was thinking more deeply than most students around him. His quiet nature simply concealed the depth of his inner world. Albert's teachers, trained to value speed and obedience, often misinterpreted his silence. They assumed he was disengaged when, in truth, he was reflecting. They believed he lacked drive when, in reality, he was exploring ideas more profoundly than expected. Their evaluations sometimes stung, but Albert rarely reacted. Instead, he held his thoughts close, letting them form in the privacy of his mind. This early misunderstanding between him and his teachers planted the first seeds of his lifelong skepticism toward rigid authority. Still, not every moment in school felt heavy or restrictive. There were subjects where Albert felt his mind light up with excitement, particularly in mathematics and the natural sciences. These subjects offered him clarity and structure that felt soothing. Mathematical equations moved with a kind of calm logic, and the puzzles they presented invited patient exploration rather than quick responses. Albert cherished these lessons, seeing them as small islands of freedom in an otherwise rigid academic landscape. These moments reassured him that his mind had a place where it could breathe. At home, Albert found comfort in the supportive environment his family created. His parents, understanding his thoughtful nature, did not pressure him to perform in school the way others might have. Instead, they encouraged him to learn at his own pace, providing him with books, tools, and quiet spaces where he could think. His mother played piano in the evenings, filling the apartment with soft melodies that eased the tension of the day. These musical interludes helped Albert settle, reminding him that life held beauty beyond the classroom's expectations. One of the most influential figures in Albert's early learning remained his uncle Jacob, who visited frequently. Jacob recognized the spark in Albert and nurtured it with warm conversations and simple challenges. He introduced Albert to more advanced mathematical ideas, encouraging him to explore beyond what the school curriculum allowed. Albert approached these lessons with quiet excitement, feeling validated and understood in ways that rarely happened in the classroom. These moments strengthened his love for learning and helped him trust his own intellectual instincts. As the months passed, Albert grew more aware of the pressure that schooling placed on children his age. Expectations were high, and success was often measured by conformity rather than comprehension. Many students adapted easily, moving through exercises and recitations without question. Albert could not help but notice that he learned differently. His curiosity was gentle but persistent, and it did not fade under pressure. Instead, the pressure only made him more aware that true understanding required freedom to think, to question, and to follow ideas in their own natural direction. Albert's struggles with memorization-based subjects became more noticeable during this period. History lessons, filled with dates and names, did not capture his interest. Language classes demanded repetition rather than insight. These subjects felt heavy to him, lacking the clarity he found in mathematics and science. Yet he persisted, working through his assignments with quiet determination. He accepted that some subjects came easily while others required patience. His willingness to embrace this balance showed a maturity beyond his years. During weekends, Albert often took long walks through the city, using the time to think through questions that lingered in his mind. He observed the way shadows changed as the sun moved, the way reflections danced on water, and the way sounds echoed through narrow streets. These observations, though simple, filled him with a sense of wonder. Nature seemed to speak a language he instinctively understood, a language of patterns, rhythms, and subtle rules. These gentle discoveries nurtured his curiosity, reminding him that learning did not end when he left the classroom. Touching on his introspective nature, Albert often felt more connected to ideas than to social interactions. While he had a few close friends, he was not naturally outgoing. Noise and large groups sometimes overwhelmed him, pushing him back into the comfort of solitude. But solitude never felt lonely for him. It was where his mind felt most free, where ideas flowed without interruption. This comfort with his inner world played a crucial role in shaping the thinker he would become. Albert's teachers occasionally misunderstood this solitude, interpreting it as withdrawal rather than contemplation. They sometimes encouraged him to be more engaged, more responsive, more outwardly attentive. Albert listened politely but rarely changed his behavior, sensing that his true strength lay in his inner calm. He did not force himself to become someone he was not. Instead, he learned to navigate the expectations of school while preserving the quiet space inside his mind where ideas could grow. Throughout this period, Albert's curiosity about invisible forces deepened. He wondered more frequently about the nature of light, the behavior of energy, and the patterns that seemed to exist beneath the surface of everyday life. He began sketching small diagrams in his notebooks, not as assignments but as personal explorations. These sketches helped him think, giving form to questions he could not yet articulate. Though the drawings were simple, they reflected the early stages of ideas that would later reshape scientific understanding. His fascination with light grew especially strong. He noticed how light behaved differently from physical objects, how it moved, how it bent, how it changed depending on the environment. He watched sunbeams through windows, observed reflections in puddles, and studied candle flames with quiet intensity. Light seemed almost alive to him, carrying secrets he longed to uncover. These early observations became the first hints of a lifelong pursuit. Albert's parents observed his growing interest in scientific ideas with a mixture of pride and gentle amusement. They loved his curiosity but remained grounded, offering support without pushing him toward any specific path. Their home was a refuge, a quiet space where learning and relaxation blended naturally. Even on difficult school days, Albert returned to an environment where he felt safe and understood. This emotional foundation allowed him to maintain his calm and pursue his interests without fear. Financial struggles continued to ebb and flow within the Einstein household, shaping the family's daily life with careful budgeting and modest choices. Albert understood these challenges, sensing the weight his parents carried. Their quiet resilience taught him that life required patience and adaptability. He learned that hardship did not need to overshadow hope, and that persistence often mattered more than circumstance. These lessons would stay with him, shaping his approach to both science and life. Though school felt restrictive, Albert discovered occasional moments of genuine inspiration in the classroom. A thoughtful teacher explaining a mathematical principle, a well-worded idea in a textbook, or a small experiment performed during science lessons could spark hours of reflection. These moments revealed the depth of his engagement, showing that he was not apathetic but selectively passionate. He gravitated naturally toward ideas that felt meaningful, and he followed those ideas with quiet dedication. Albert also began developing a sense of personal philosophy during this period. He sensed that true understanding required both freedom and discipline. He saw that curiosity needed direction, but not constraint. He realized that questions were valuable even when answers were not immediately available. This philosophy gave him a sense of peace as he navigated the complexities of schooling. It helped him remain patient and grounded, even when expectations felt overwhelming. Despite the challenges, Albert's love for mathematics continued to grow. He often worked through problems at home long after school had ended, exploring different methods and solutions. The structure of mathematics brought him comfort, like a steady rhythm that made sense even when the world felt confusing. He found joy in discovering new relationships between numbers and shapes, and he cherished the clarity that came from solving a difficult problem. Mathematics became a quiet sanctuary for his mind. As Albert entered his adolescent years, he began to understand the importance of self-direction in learning. He realized that he could not rely solely on teachers to guide him. He needed to seek knowledge independently, following his own curiosity. This realization empowered him, giving him a sense of responsibility for his intellectual growth. It was a gentle but transformative shift, shaping the independent thinker he would become. While school demanded conformity, Albert quietly practiced his own form of rebellion, not through actions, but through thought. He questioned what others accepted, examined what others overlooked, and refused to let rigid rules define the limits of his understanding. This subtle resistance did not disrupt the classroom, but it shaped his inner world profoundly. It nurtured his originality and encouraged him to approach ideas with fresh perspectives. Through all these experiences, Albert remained deeply reflective about the nature of learning itself. He sensed that education was not merely about absorbing information, but about developing the ability to think clearly. He began to understand that true insight came not from memorization, but from connection. This belief became the foundation of his intellectual identity, influencing every discovery he would later make. As this stage of schooling drew toward its close, Albert carried with him a mind shaped not by the rigid expectations of teachers, but by the quiet persistence of his own curiosity. His thoughts had grown deeper, his questions more refined, and his sense of self more grounded. He still felt the weight of external pressure, but he had learned to navigate it with grace and patience. His inner world had become a steady companion, guiding him gently through each new challenge. The quiet child who once studied a compass with wonder had grown into a thoughtful young student navigating a system that did not quite fit him. Yet his curiosity remained intact, shining softly through every moment of doubt and pressure. That curiosity, patient and unwavering, was beginning to take shape as something more, a quiet force that would soon lead him into new experiences, deeper questions, and the first major turning points of his life. And as he stepped quietly toward the next chapter of learning, a subtle shift began to take place. His world was about to widen beyond the walls of the Munich classroom, offering him new landscapes for his mind to explore. New influences, new challenges, and new opportunities waited just beyond the horizon. They would meet him softly, one by one, guiding him toward the ideas that would one day change the way humanity understood reality itself. As Albert settled deeper into life in Switzerland, he noticed his relationship with learning begin to shift. The quieter environment, the open-ended nature of classes, and the gentle encouragement from teachers allowed him to think more freely than ever before. He no longer felt pressured to conform to strict expectations, nor did he feel confined by rigid academic routines. Instead, he felt as though the world of ideas had quietly widened around him. This subtle change gave him room to explore new possibilities with a sense of calm anticipation. It was during this time that Albert first encountered what could be called an early form of innovation culture. Switzerland, with its blend of scientific curiosity and practical engineering, fostered an atmosphere where creativity and critical thinking were genuinely valued. Workshops buzzed with new inventions, classrooms hosted lively debates, and students often tinkered with ideas simply for the joy of exploration. Albert found himself drawn to this environment. It reminded him of the freedom he felt as a child when exploring puzzles with his Uncle Jacob. The city around him reflected this spirit of progress. Streets were filled with cafes where students shared ideas, and laboratories quietly worked on technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Albert observed this culture with a soft, steady interest. He admired how openly people pursued new solutions, how naturally they combined curiosity with practicality. This exposure helped strengthen his belief that knowledge should not be pursued merely for academic success, but for the meaningful impact it could have on the world. Albert's academic work continued to deepen during this time. He studied physics with increasing dedication, discovering joy in the way elegant theories could describe complex natural phenomena. He learned about electromagnetic waves, principles of mechanics, and the work of scientists whose ideas formed the backbone of modern physics. These concepts did not intimidate him. Instead, they encouraged him to ask deeper questions, questions that lingered softly in his mind long after classes ended. One of the most profound influences on Albert during this time came from reading the works of James Clerk Maxwell. Maxwell's equations, which describe the behavior of electricity and magnetism, fascinated Albert deeply. He saw in them a unity that seemed almost poetic, a connection between forces that once appeared separate. Maxwell's ideas stirred something within him, a curiosity that felt both soothing and challenging. He sensed that these theories held clues to the mystery of light, a subject that had captivated him since childhood. Yet, despite his growing passion for physics, Albert found himself increasingly unsatisfied with certain aspects of academia. He observed that many students and professors approached scientific inquiry with caution, bound by tradition and fearful of challenging established ideas. Albert respected their knowledge, but he felt that innovation required courage, a willingness to question, to imagine, and to explore possibilities that others had not yet considered. This realization alerted him to the limitations of a purely academic path. Albert's professors were divided in their views of him. Some saw him as brilliant, though unorthodox, appreciating his depth while feeling puzzled by his unconventional learning style. Others found him frustrating, too inquisitive, too independent, and too unwilling to follow strict academic protocol. Albert, in his soft and patient manner, did not let these judgments trouble him. He knew that his curiosity did not always follow the structure of the curriculum, and he accepted that this might create misunderstandings. Despite enjoying the intellectual freedom Switzerland offered, Albert began to feel uncertain about his future. He wondered whether he was meant to follow a traditional academic career path, or whether he was destined to explore ideas in his own way. He knew he was capable of rigorous study, but he sensed that his creativity might be constrained by the expectations of formal academic institutions. This internal conflict shaped many of his reflections during this period. To ease this uncertainty, Albert sought comfort in the simple routines that nurtured him. He took long walks along the riverbanks, observing how the light danced across the surface of the water. He studied the shapes of clouds drifting overhead, noting their patterns and the gentle rhythm of their movement. These quiet observations provided him with space to think and to breathe. They reminded him that understanding often unfolded slowly, like the shift from morning to afternoon. During one of these reflective periods, Albert began considering whether he should continue to pursue academic research or whether he should explore a path outside the structured world of universities. He thought about becoming a teacher, a researcher, or even an inventor. Each possibility carried its own set of uncertainties, but he approached them with his characteristic calm. He trusted that clarity would come with time. Meanwhile, Albert continued to engage deeply with physics. He conducted small experiments when he could, using everyday materials to test simple principles. These experiments were modest, but they brought him joy. They allowed him to connect theory with observation, helping him understand the world in tangible ways. This hands-on exploration strengthened his confidence in his ability to uncover new insights independently. It was also during this period that Albert began to articulate what would eventually become a defining feature of his scientific identity: the belief that imagination was more important than knowledge. He observed that knowledge alone could become restrictive, binding thinkers to established ideas. But imagination offered freedom, the freedom to envision new possibilities, to challenge assumptions, and to see beyond what was already known. This belief shaped every aspect of his intellectual growth. Albert's quiet confidence grew steadily as he continued moving through his studies. He no longer felt overwhelmed by academic expectations. Instead, he felt that he had found his own place within the world of learning, a place that valued thoughtful reflection over immediate certainty. This stability allowed him to absorb new ideas with more clarity, deepening his understanding of physics in ways that felt natural and fulfilling. Even as he grew more confident academically, Albert remained deeply humble. He often said that the more he learned, the more he realized how little he truly understood. This humility kept him grounded. It kept him curious. It reminded him that science was not a race toward mastery, but a lifelong journey of exploration. This perspective helped him cultivate patience, a quality that would become essential in his future work. Albert's friendships continued to enrich his days, offering him both companionship and intellectual stimulation. He enjoyed listening to others' ideas and contributing his own thoughts when he felt they might be helpful. His friends appreciated his calm presence and the gentle wisdom he brought to conversations. These bonds softened the challenges he faced, reminding him that learning was not a solitary endeavor. As time passed, Albert became increasingly aware of the delicate balance between intuition and structure in his scientific thinking. He understood that mathematics provided the necessary scaffolding for scientific theories, but he also knew that intuition offered the spark that made those theories possible. This balance fascinated him. He saw that great discoveries required both clarity and imagination, two qualities that lived harmoniously within him. During this time, Albert also began to sense the first gentle stirrings of dissatisfaction with the academic establishment. He observed how slowly institutions adopted new ideas and how often innovation was met with resistance. This troubled him quietly. He believed that the purpose of science was to advance understanding, not to protect tradition. Yet he also recognized that institutions had their own rhythms, shaped by caution and long-standing norms. As he reflected on these tensions, Albert realized that he might not fit neatly into the traditional path of academia. He felt drawn toward exploring ideas independently, free from the constraints that often accompanied institutional involvement. This realization did not worry him. Instead, it gave him a sense of quiet liberation. He began to imagine a life where he could pursue his curiosity on his own terms. Albert's interest in product design, though not formally called that at the time, also began to take shape. He admired technologies that improved people's lives and appreciated the practicality of engineering solutions. He found himself thinking about innovations that could be applied in everyday life. These thoughts revealed a side of him that sought not just theoretical understanding, but meaningful impact. As the end of this academic stage approached, Albert felt a soft sense of readiness. He understood that he had outgrown certain aspects of classroom learning. He sensed that the next part of his journey would involve applying what he had learned in ways that extended beyond textbooks. This readiness was not dramatic. It was subtle, steady, and rooted in quiet self-awareness. He began considering what steps he would take once he completed his studies. He thought about working in a technical field, perhaps as a researcher or engineer. He imagined himself contributing to innovations that might shape the future. These thoughts felt both exciting and uncertain, but he welcomed them. They were signs that he was ready to move forward. Albert's relationship with the natural world remained a source of ongoing inspiration. He continued observing how light behaved in different environments, how time seemed to flow differently depending on his attention, and how space offered its own quiet rhythms. These reflections deepened his fascination with the fundamental workings of the universe. They became the foundation for the questions he would pursue for the rest of his life. As this chapter neared its close, Albert took time to thank the mentors who had supported him. He wrote letters expressing gratitude, visited teachers who had encouraged him, and reflected on the friendships that had shaped his journey. He understood that each person had contributed to his intellectual growth. Their influence would remain with him long after he moved on. By this stage, Albert had grown into a young man with a mind both grounded and expansive. His confidence was no longer fragile. It was quiet, steady, and deeply rooted in curiosity. He trusted his ability to think independently and to explore ideas with patience. This trust would become one of his greatest strengths. And as he stepped out of this chapter and into the next, he carried with him the clarity he had gained from years of quiet exploration. New challenges, new roles, and new discoveries were waiting ahead, ready to meet the curiosity that had guided him since childhood. These coming experiences would bring him closer to the insights that would one day transform humanity's understanding of space, time, and the nature of light itself. Albert entered adulthood carrying the same quiet curiosity that had been with him since childhood. But now the world expected him to translate that curiosity into a stable profession. After completing his studies, he found himself facing a period of uncertainty, unsure where his skills would be valued. Academia, with its traditions and hierarchy, had not embraced him as he once hoped. Professors who misunderstood his unconventional habits offered little support. With limited prospects, Albert accepted a position at the Swiss Patent Office in Bern. The job was humble, practical, and far from the academic world he had imagined for himself. Yet it provided stability and a sense of structure, both of which he needed at this stage of his life. The office was quiet, with long rows of desks and soft humming sounds, created by the steady flow of paperwork. To Albert, it felt like a place where he could breathe and think without judgment. At first, the role felt unremarkable. Albert spent his days reviewing patent applications, analyzing inventions, and determining whether the proposed ideas were original or feasible. The tasks were repetitive in their structure, but the inventions themselves varied widely. They ranged from simple mechanical devices to more complex electrical systems. Albert approached each file with care, reading slowly, thinking deeply, and making detailed notes. The more he worked, the more he realized that the patent office offered him something few academic institutions had: clarity. Each application presented a puzzle, a problem that needed careful understanding. He appreciated the way these puzzles connected ideas from physics, engineering, and practical design. The work was not glamorous, but it nourished his intellect quietly and consistently. This became one of the most unexpected gifts of his early career. Colleagues at the patent office saw Albert as polite, reserved, and deeply thoughtful. He rarely spoke impulsively, choosing his words carefully when he joined conversations. Some co-workers viewed him as distant, while others saw him as someone who simply preferred reflection over small talk. Albert felt comfortable in this environment because it allowed him to observe without pressure. He formed quiet friendships with those who appreciated his gentle nature. Every day at noon, Albert took a long walk during his break. The peaceful streets of Bern became a sanctuary where he could explore ideas beyond the scope of his job. These walks allowed him to step away from the structured environment of the office and into the open world of thought. The steady rhythm of his footsteps often sparked new lines of reasoning. Under the soft Swiss light, he reflected on questions about energy, motion, and the behavior of light. Outside the office, Albert continued to study physics independently. He filled notebooks with calculations, sketches, and questions that captured his imagination. His apartment, modest and quiet, became a workshop for ideas. The desk where he worked was small, with just enough space for a few books and sheets of paper. Yet this small space became the birthplace of ideas that would later transform the world of science. Despite his dedication, Albert sometimes felt unrecognized and underestimated by the academic community. He had submitted papers to journals, only to receive limited attention. He applied for teaching positions but was overlooked time and again. These disappointments could have discouraged him, but instead they deepened his patience. He trusted that clarity and recognition would come in their own time. Until then, he continued his work quietly, believing that the pursuit of understanding held value regardless of external acknowledgement. Albert's humility helped him navigate these challenges with grace. He did not blame others for the lack of opportunities. Instead, he used each rejection as motivation to refine his ideas further. He believed that if his thoughts were sound, they would eventually find their place in the scientific community. This patience and resilience became trademarks of his character. During this period, Albert developed a daily routine that balanced structure and freedom. He worked diligently at the patent office, ensuring he fulfilled his responsibilities with care. After work, he spent evenings reading scientific papers, revisiting mathematical principles, and exploring new theories. He approached these studies with quiet joy, finding satisfaction in the slow and steady progress he made. This rhythm gave his life both stability and purpose. Even as he adapted to the responsibilities of adulthood, Albert remained deeply connected to his childhood fascination with invisible forces. He often returned to the same questions that had followed him for years. What is the nature of light? How does time behave? What underlying principles hold the universe together? These questions stayed with him, gently guiding his thoughts as he worked through daily tasks. The patent office encouraged Albert to think precisely and clearly. Each application required him to evaluate inventions based on their physical plausibility. This discipline sharpened his analytical skills. He learned to identify inconsistencies, to trace ideas back to their foundations, and to articulate flaws with clarity. These skills would become invaluable in his later scientific work. Despite the repetitive nature of his job, Albert found meaning in the subtle creativity required to understand new inventions. Some applications were poorly written or conceptually confused. Others presented genuinely innovative ideas. Albert enjoyed reconstructing these proposals mentally, imagining how they might function in the real world. This exercise strengthened his ability to visualize physical processes, a talent that would later define his scientific method. During the evenings, Albert often met with a small circle of close friends. They gathered in simple cafes or in one another's homes to discuss philosophy, physics, and the nature of human existence. These conversations flowed gently, filled with the warmth of shared curiosity. Albert valued these relationships not for their social comfort, but for the intellectual companionship they offered. They reminded him that learning was a collective journey, not a solitary one. Over time, Albert developed a quiet conviction that he could contribute something meaningful to the world of physics. This belief did not stem from arrogance, but from a patient faith in the clarity of his ideas. He recognized that he thought differently from many of his peers. He saw connections where others saw boundaries. And he viewed questions not as obstacles, but as invitations to explore deeper truths. This mindset gradually strengthened his sense of purpose. Financially, Albert's life remained modest. The salary from the patent office covered his basic needs, but allowed little room for luxuries. He lived simply, cooking his own meals, repairing his own belongings, and saving where he could. These habits taught him resourcefulness and independence. They also helped him focus on what mattered most, the pursuit of understanding. By this time, Albert's curiosity had matured into a disciplined form of inquiry. He no longer chased every question that came to mind. Instead, he learned to follow the lines of thought that carried genuine significance. This discipline helped him refine his ideas and explore theories with a sense of intention. It also brought him a deeper sense of fulfillment. Bern, with its quiet streets and stable rhythms, proved to be the perfect setting for Albert's intellectual growth. The city did not overwhelm him with noise or distractions. Instead, it offered him the peace and space he needed to think deeply. The gentle pace of life matched the pace of his mind, allowing ideas to mature naturally. This harmony became one of the most precious aspects of his time in the city. During quiet nights, Albert often stood by his small window, looking out over the rooftops. He watched the stars appear slowly, one by one, as the sky darkened. The soft glow of lamplight reflected off the cobblestones below. These moments filled him with a sense of calm wonder. He felt connected to the cosmos in a quiet, intimate way. The vastness of the universe did not intimidate him. It comforted him. As Albert continued to grow in his role at the patent office, he found unexpected joy in the practicalities of his work. He learned to appreciate the craftsmanship behind small inventions and the creativity behind new designs. These experiences helped him see the world of physics not as an abstract field disconnected from everyday life, but as something deeply intertwined with human ingenuity. This realization expanded his perspective. Albert also developed a soft confidence during this period. It did not announce itself loudly, but settled into him gently over time. He discovered that he could trust his instincts, rely on his reasoning, and follow his curiosity without fear. This quiet strength became the foundation upon which his later breakthroughs would rest. It gave him the courage to question long-standing assumptions and to explore ideas that others might dismiss. His relationship with science deepened in ways that surprised even him. He discovered that the more he learned, the more he was drawn to the simplicity underlying complex phenomena. This appreciation for simplicity guided his thinking, helping him identify patterns that others overlooked. He began to believe that the universe operated according to fundamental principles that could be understood by anyone willing to look deeply enough. As his ideas developed, Albert felt a gentle pull towards something more than his daily work. He sensed that he was on the cusp of discoveries that would require time, patience, and unwavering dedication. He wondered how he would balance this growing ambition with the demands of his job, but he trusted that clarity would come when it was meant to. Near the end of this chapter, Albert found himself standing at a quiet crossroads. His life at the patent office was stable, predictable, and safe. Yet inside him, something was beginning to stir. A deeper vision, a sense of possibility, was taking shape softly and steadily. It invited him to step forward into a future he could not yet fully imagine. And as this part of his journey reached its closing moments, he carried forward the calm determination he had built through years of reflection and quiet work. New ideas were already gathering at the edges of his awareness, waiting patiently for him to notice them. Soon those ideas would guide him toward the most extraordinary chapter of his scientific life. Albert's life at the patent office continued to unfold with a steady rhythm. Each day brought new applications, new devices, and new puzzles for him to decipher. The predictability of this routine provided him with a comforting sense of stability. Yet within this routine, subtle changes were occurring. Albert was growing, not in outward achievement, but in the quiet depths of his character. One of the most unexpected developments during this period was Albert's growing emotional awareness. Spending time in a professional environment introduced him to people from varied backgrounds, each with their own personalities, hopes, and frustrations. He observed colleagues who handled stress with grace and others who struggled under pressure. These observations taught him the value of empathy. He realized that understanding people required the same patience and curiosity he applied to scientific ideas. Albert listened more than he spoke, offering support through small gestures rather than grand statements. He learned that calmness could diffuse conflict, that gentle reasoning could bridge disagreements, and that patience often led to mutual understanding. These lessons shaped his approach to communication. He discovered that persuasion did not require force. It required clarity, respect, and kindness. This growing emotional intelligence extended into his personal relationships. Albert became more attuned to the feelings of those around him. He recognized when friends needed encouragement, when they needed space, and when they simply needed someone to listen. This sensitivity strengthened his friendships, creating bonds built on trust and mutual respect. These relationships provided a quiet refuge during challenging moments. The modest salary from the patent office required Albert to budget carefully. He learned to live within his means, choosing simplicity over indulgence. He cooked simple meals, repaired his clothing, and spent money thoughtfully. These habits taught him resourcefulness, a quality that later enabled him to pursue scientific work without relying on academic institutions. His simple lifestyle allowed him to focus on his intellectual development rather than financial concerns. Despite the quiet nature of his work, Albert occasionally felt a soft tug of doubt. He wondered whether he was fulfilling his potential or whether he had drifted too far from the path he once envisioned. These doubts arrived gently, never overwhelming him, but lingering long enough to prompt reflection. He understood that progress was not always linear. Sometimes life required patience before revealing the next step. These reflections helped him stay grounded. During this period, Albert refined his ability to approach complex problems with calm clarity. Patent applications often presented incomplete descriptions of devices, requiring him to reconstruct the underlying principles through logical deduction. This process strengthened his ability to reason through ambiguity. He learned to trust his intuition while verifying his conclusions through careful analysis. These skills would become vital in developing his later theories. Albert's independent studies continued to grow in intensity. After work, he often spent long evenings immersed in physics texts, reviewing the work of scientists who had laid the foundation for modern scientific thought. He read about thermodynamics, electrodynamics, and the early attempts to unify forces. These studies deepened his understanding of the universe's fundamental structure. They also helped him recognize the gaps in existing theories, gaps he felt compelled to explore. Albert's fascination with light remained at the center of his intellectual pursuits. He studied how light moved through space, how it interacted with matter, and why it seemed to behave both as a wave and as something more mysterious. These questions filled him with a soft sense of wonder. He sensed that light held clues to the deepest secrets of the universe. This persistent curiosity became a quiet compass, guiding his thoughts. As his ideas developed, Albert began sharing them with a small group of like-minded friends who met regularly to discuss science and philosophy. These gatherings became known informally as the Olympia Academy, a playful name that reflected the group's shared humor and intellectual camaraderie. Together, they read books, debated ideas, and explored the boundaries of knowledge. These discussions fueled Albert's creativity, helping him connect ideas in new and unexpected ways. The Olympia Academy discussions were marked by openness and warmth. Each member contributed insights, and each respected the other's perspectives. There was no competition, no hierarchy, and no pressure to impress. The atmosphere was one of collaborative exploration. Albert cherished these evenings. They reminded him that learning could be joyful and social, not merely solitary and challenging. Through these discussions, Albert developed a deeper appreciation for the philosophical aspects of science. He explored questions about the nature of reality, the limits of human perception, and the relationship between observation and truth. These reflections sharpened his intellectual maturity. He began to see physics not merely as a collection of principles, but as a doorway to understanding existence itself. This philosophical lens would later shape his most profound theories. The more Albert studied, the more he realized that many scientific assumptions were based on incomplete evidence. He saw inconsistencies in theories considered authoritative. He noticed gaps that others overlooked. These observations strengthened his belief that science was an evolving journey, not a fixed collection of truths. He felt encouraged to explore these uncertainties, trusting that clarity would emerge from patient thought. During this time, Albert also discovered the quiet power of routine. Each day, he balanced structured responsibilities with open-ended exploration. He worked diligently at the patent office, fulfilled his duties with care, and then turned to his studies with renewed focus. This consistency allowed him to build momentum in his intellectual pursuits. It also provided emotional stability during moments of self-doubt. Albert's developing calmness became one of his greatest assets. He learned to sit with complex questions for long periods without frustration. He understood that insight often arrived slowly, emerging only after extended reflection. This patience allowed him to approach difficult problems with clarity and confidence. It also helped him maintain balance in his life, preventing the pressures of work from overwhelming him. Though still young, Albert began to embody the qualities of a quiet leader. His friends looked to him for thoughtful perspectives, drawn to his ability to articulate ideas with both depth and humility. He offered guidance without imposing his views, and he listened with genuine interest. This leadership style reflected his belief that wisdom came from collaboration rather than authority. These qualities would later define his approach to scientific mentorship. Through all these experiences, Albert nurtured a growing sense of inner purpose. He felt that the universe offered clues waiting to be discovered, and he wanted to uncover them in the gentlest, most thoughtful way possible. His desire was not to seek fame or recognition, but to contribute meaningfully to humanity's understanding. This quiet ambition guided him through the uncertainties of daily life. As this chapter drew toward its close, Albert found himself approaching a transformative moment. His mind had matured through years of independent study, disciplined work, and deep reflection. He felt ready, softly, steadily, to pursue the questions that had lingered in his thoughts since childhood. These questions centered on light, time, and the hidden structures of the universe. They whispered to him with increasing clarity, and as he stepped gently into the next chapter of his life, the ideas that would soon change the world began gathering silently within him. They were not loud nor dramatic. They were patient, steady, and filled with wonder, just like the mind that carried them. Albert entered this period of his life with a sense of quiet steadiness. His routine at the patent office remained unchanged, yet something inside him had begun to shift. Ideas that had lingered softly at the edges of his mind were now taking clearer shape. He felt as though a gentle internal tide was beginning to rise, carrying him toward deeper questions. This feeling did not rush him. It moved with calm determination. During these early moments, Albert continued to balance work and personal study with remarkable patience. At the office, he read through patent applications with the same careful attention he had practiced for years. Each invention taught him something new about the way people thought and created. These lessons strengthened his analytical abilities, offering him small insights into the structure of physical reality. In the evenings, he returned to his notebooks, filling page after page with calculations that reflected the quiet murmurs of inspiration. Albert's apartment during this time remained modest, with little more than a table, a bed, a shelf of books, and a soft lamp that illuminated his work late into the night. The simplicity of his surroundings did not bother him. Instead, it created a kind of mental clarity he valued deeply. Without distractions, he could let ideas settle naturally, forming connections slowly and without pressure. This environment nurtured the reflective silence he needed. Light continued to captivate Albert's thoughts. He wondered how something so familiar could remain so mysterious, eluding complete explanation despite centuries of study. He returned often to Maxwell's equations, sensing that they held the key to deeper truths. Yet he also recognized that there were contradictions in the physics of his time. gaps that no existing theory fully resolved. These gaps invited him to think more boldly, though his boldness always manifested through quiet contemplation. As he walked to and from the patent office, Albert often imagined himself moving alongside a beam of light. This mental image had followed him for years, evolving slowly with each new insight. Now it began to spark more structured reflections. He asked himself how light appeared to different observers and what principles governed its behavior. These questions moved gently through his thoughts, weaving themselves into his daily routine. Albert shared some of his early ideas with his closest friends, though he did so carefully. He did not seek praise or validation. Instead, he valued the clarity that came from articulating ideas aloud. His friends listened with curiosity, offering supportive questions that helped him refine his thinking. These conversations were never hurried. They unfolded slowly, often extending late into the night over simple meals and warm conversation. Over time, Albert began to believe that he might be approaching something significant. He felt a calm sense of alignment, as though pieces of a long-standing puzzle were beginning to fit together. This feeling did not make him anxious. Instead, it brought him a sense of gratitude. He appreciated that the universe revealed itself slowly, offering its secrets only to those willing to observe patiently. As spring turned to summer, Albert's thoughts began to crystallize around a small cluster of ideas that seemed both simple and profound. These ideas related to the nature of motion, the behavior of light, and the principles that govern the flow of time. He considered whether time might not be as fixed as people believed, and whether the speed of light might hold a more fundamental role in the structure of reality. These reflections grew stronger with each day. Albert maintained his humility through all of this. He did not assume that he was on the verge of discovery. Instead, he viewed each idea as a possibility to be tested with care. He filled notebook after notebook with quiet calculations, sometimes reaching dead ends, sometimes finding new pathways. This patient process reassured him. He trusted the slow unfolding of thought more than flashes of inspiration. Outside of his intellectual work, Albert's life remained grounded in simple pleasures. He enjoyed playing his violin in the evenings, letting the notes blend with the quiet night air. The music soothed him, giving him space to rest between intense periods of thought. It reminded him that beauty existed not only in equations, but also in the softness of sound. These musical moments kept him emotionally balanced. During this time, Albert became more aware of the importance of emotional grounding. He recognized that clarity of thought required a peaceful mind. When he felt tired or overwhelmed, he stepped away from his work, taking long walks along the riverbanks or sitting quietly by the window. These breaks allowed his mind to reset, ensuring that his thinking remained calm and steady. He never forced inspiration. He allowed it to arrive gently. The patent office continued to serve as an unexpected catalyst for his creativity. Each invention he reviewed reflected a piece of human ingenuity. Some were simple tools, others were ambitious designs. Albert admired the creativity behind these inventions, seeing them as expressions of curiosity not unlike his own. These small glimpses of innovation reinforced his belief that progress often emerged from unexpected places. As Albert's reflections deepened, he began organizing his ideas into separate lines of inquiry. He created small folders filled with calculations, each folder dedicated to a different concept. One explored the nature of light. Another examined the relationship between motion and time. Yet another contemplated the structure of atoms. These folders became a physical representation of the internal landscape he had quietly cultivated for years. As he continued this work, optimism settled gently within him. He did not feel rushed or pressured. Instead, he felt as though he were following a natural path, one he had been moving toward since childhood. The pieces of his intellectual identity, curiosity, patience, imagination, now worked together in harmony. This inner harmony gave him the confidence to explore questions that many considered too ambitious. By the time summer arrived, Albert felt ready to begin writing. The clarity he needed had emerged slowly, shaped by years of reflection and quiet study. He approached this moment without fanfare, sitting at his desk with a soft lamp illuminating the page. He wrote not to impress the scientific community, but to articulate ideas that had finally settled into coherence. This gentle beginning marked the start of what would later be known as his miracle year. And as he placed his pen gently onto the page, Albert took the first step toward discoveries that would quietly reshape the way humanity understood the nature of reality. Albert approached the second stage of his work with the same patient determination that had carried him through the first. He felt no rush to publish quickly or dramatically. Instead, he let each idea move through him slowly, giving it the space it needed to mature. This gentle approach helped him maintain emotional balance even as his thoughts grew more complex. He trusted that clarity would arrive when the moment was right. His first paper of the year explored the nature of light and the photoelectric effect. The idea emerged not from a desire to challenge existing theories, but from a quiet curiosity about how light interacted with matter. Albert questioned whether light always behaved as a wave, or whether it might sometimes act as something more concentrated. These questions led him to propose that light could be understood in terms of small, discrete packets of energy. The simplicity of the idea surprised even him. Albert wrote the paper with calm precision, avoiding dramatic language or bold declarations. He focused on clarity, describing his reasoning, step by step. When he submitted the paper to a scientific journal, he expected little attention. He saw the work as a contribution, not a revolution. Yet the paper would later become one of the cornerstones of quantum physics. At the time, however, Albert simply returned to his desk, ready to continue the quiet work he loved. Shortly after the first paper, another idea emerged. This one centered on the motion of small particles suspended in liquid. Albert realized that their movement could be explained through the random motion of molecules, offering concrete evidence for the existence of atoms. This idea excited him gently, though he expressed his excitement only through long walks and quiet reflection. He wrote the paper with the same steady patience, presenting his conclusions with humility. As the months passed, Albert found himself immersed in a rhythm of discovery. His mind felt clear, his thoughts organized, and his confidence quietly growing. Yet he remained grounded, continuing his work at the patent office each morning and returning to his studies each evening. This balance created a steady emotional foundation, allowing him to explore complex ideas without feeling overwhelmed. The third paper of the year emerged from Albert's reflections on the nature of motion. He questioned what happened when objects moved at speeds approaching that of light. Traditional physics offered no satisfying answers. Albert approached the problem gently, trusting his intuition and following the threads of logic wherever they led. Slowly, he realized that time and space might not be absolute, an idea that felt both simple and profound. Albert worked through these reflections with characteristic humility. He did not assume he was right. Instead, he checked each calculation carefully, revisiting earlier steps whenever something felt unclear. This patience allowed him to uncover one of the most significant theories in the history of science, the theory of special relativity. When the idea finally crystallized, Albert experienced a quiet moment of stillness. He felt the calm joy of understanding something that had long been hidden. He wrote the paper with the same clarity and gentleness that shaped all his work. There was no sense of self-importance in his writing, no attempt to impress. He simply articulated the truth as he saw it. When he submitted the paper, he expected only that a few people might find it interesting. He did not imagine that it would reshape the foundations of physics. Yet even after completing this work, Albert sensed that something was still missing. He felt that there was a deeper connection waiting to be discovered, a thread that tied energy and mass together in a simple relationship. This reflection lingered softly in his thoughts. One evening, while walking home, the idea began to take shape. He realized that mass and energy were interchangeable, that they were different expressions of the same underlying reality. This insight led him to write a short paper that would introduce the world to one of the most famous equations in history. He expressed the relationship as E = mc2, a simple combination of symbols that conveyed profound meaning. Yet Albert presented the idea without fanfare, submitting it as though it were a small addition to the year's work, rather than a monumental shift in scientific understanding. Throughout this extraordinary period, Albert remained humble. He continued his daily work at the patent office, reviewed inventions with the same care, and took long walks through the quiet streets of Bern. He did not treat himself differently, nor did he expect others to admire him. His genius unfolded not through displays of intensity, but through the soft, steady persistence that defined his character. Friends who saw him during this time noticed only that he seemed calmer than usual. They observed that he carried himself with a sense of quiet purpose. Yet he still laughed gently during conversations, still listened with patience, still enjoyed simple pleasures. His life remained rooted in ordinary routines, even as his ideas reached towards extraordinary truths. Albert's wife encouraged him during these months, offering emotional support and warm companionship. She created a peaceful home environment that allowed him to work without distraction. Her presence brought balance to his life, reminding him that intellectual pursuits were only one part of existence. Albert valued this balance deeply. Once all 4 papers were completed, Albert felt a sense of gentle completion. He did not celebrate the achievement outwardly. Instead, he returned to his violin, playing softly into the night. The music gave him space to breathe, allowing his mind to settle after months of intense reflection. In these quiet moments, he felt gratitude for the clarity that had visited him. When the scientific community finally recognized the significance of his work, Albert reacted with the same humility he had shown throughout his life. He did not seek recognition or praise. Instead, he viewed the acknowledgement as a sign that the ideas themselves had found their place. This reassurance allowed him to continue his work with renewed dedication. As this chapter of his life drew to a close, Albert reflected on the journey that had led him to this moment. The challenges, the uncertainties, the long evenings of solitary study, all of it had shaped him. He realized that his discoveries were not sudden flashes of insight, but the natural result of years of patient reflection. This understanding filled him with quiet satisfaction. And as he stepped forward into the next stage of his life, he carried with him the same calm curiosity that had guided him since childhood. New questions awaited him, and new challenges would soon appear. But he would face them with the same gentle persistence that had carried him through his miracle year. Albert entered this new chapter of his life with the same gentle patience that had guided him through every stage before. Although his groundbreaking papers were beginning to circulate quietly through the scientific community, he did not rush to embrace recognition. He continued working at the patent office, living modestly and thinking deeply. Yet beneath the familiar routine, something subtle had begun to change. A soft current of possibility moved through his days, guiding him towards new opportunities. Letters slowly began arriving from universities and colleagues who had read his work. Some expressed admiration, others asked questions, and a few extended early invitations to teach or collaborate. Albert approached each letter with humility, reading them carefully and responding thoughtfully. He did not feel elevated by this attention. Instead, he felt gratitude that his ideas were being considered seriously. It reassured him that his patient approach to understanding had found resonance. At the patent office, Albert continued reviewing patent applications with the same quiet dedication. His colleagues noticed the increase in correspondence, but said little, respecting his privacy. Albert appreciated this unspoken understanding. He valued the stability of the office, which had offered him a space for reflection during years when academic support was scarce. Even as recognition grew, he felt no urgency to leave this predictable rhythm. He believed that changes should come naturally, not through force. Albert's wife observed the gradual shift with warm encouragement. She noticed that his evenings, once filled solely with solitary calculations, now included occasional letters from prominent scientists. These moments filled her with quiet pride. She had supported him through uncertainty, through rejection, through years of financial constraint. Seeing his work recognized felt like witnessing a flower finally unfolding after a long winter. Albert felt this too, though he expressed it only through soft smiles and gentle reassurances. During this time, Albert continued to deepen his understanding of physics. He revisited concepts he once thought settled, examining them from new angles shaped by his recent discoveries. He explored relationships between energy and mass, time and motion, and the intricate ways in which nature maintained balance. These reflections moved through him with a calm steadiness. He believed that true understanding required ongoing examination, not complacency. Walks through Bern remained an essential part of Albert's routine. As he strolled along familiar paths, he thought about the nature of scientific progress. He observed how slowly recognition arrived, how gently ideas moved through the world, and how patiently the universe revealed its secrets. These reflections brought him a sense of peace. They reminded him that the pace of discovery did not need to match the pace of human ambition. Instead, it could unfold with the rhythm of quiet understanding. The scientific community's interest in Albert's work continued to grow. Papers circulated among researchers across Europe. Some praised his ideas, others questioned them, and still others struggled to understand the implications. This mixture of responses did not trouble Albert. He believed that new ideas naturally required time to be accepted. He welcomed thoughtful criticism, seeing it as an opportunity to refine his understanding. His humility served him well during this period. At home, Albert often sat by the window during late evenings, reading letters or reviewing previous calculations. The soft glow of lamplight cast gentle shadows across his notebooks. These quiet moments brought him comfort. He felt a connection to scientists around the world who were also awake, reading, thinking, and exploring the nature of reality. This shared pursuit created an invisible community bound not by location, but by curiosity. Eventually, Albert received his first serious offer to teach at a university. The offer came from the University of Bern, extending both a position and the reassurance that his work had gained meaningful traction. Albert accepted the invitation with gratitude and modesty. He saw the opportunity not as a reward, but as a chance to share ideas with students who might one day contribute to the field. Teaching appealed to him quietly, not for prestige, but for the chance to foster thoughtful understanding. When Albert began teaching, he approached his classes with the same gentleness that shaped his scientific work. He spoke softly, explained ideas slowly, and allowed his students time to absorb each concept. Some students struggled with his untraditional methods, expecting more structure or faster pacing. Others appreciated his calm approach, finding that it encouraged deeper understanding. Albert did not take the students' reactions personally. He believed that learning required space and patience. Balancing work at the patent office with teaching responsibilities required careful time management. Albert structured his days thoughtfully, dedicating mornings to the patent office, afternoons to lectures, and evenings to personal study. This balance created a sense of harmony in his life. It allowed him to engage with practical invention, academic exploration, and independent thought. Each role nurtured a different aspect of his mind. As Albert settled into his role as a teacher, he discovered a growing sense of fulfillment. He enjoyed watching students grapple with new ideas, asking questions and seeking clarity. Their curiosity reminded him of his own journey, filled with wonder and uncertainty. These interactions strengthened his belief that science was not merely a collection of facts, but a shared pursuit of understanding. This belief shaped his teaching style, emphasizing patience and clarity. Outside the classroom, Albert continued developing new ideas that extended the implications of his earlier work. He sensed that the theory of relativity held deeper layers waiting to be explored. He contemplated the nature of gravity, the curvature of space, and the ways in which matter influenced the fabric of the universe. These reflections unfolded slowly, often emerging during quiet evening walks or moments of solitude. He trusted that the answers would reveal themselves in their own time. Albert's colleagues at the university appreciated his soft-spoken wisdom. They admired his humility and his willingness to engage in thoughtful conversation. Over time, he became known as a gentle presence, someone whose ideas carried depth without force. This reputation reflected both his character and his approach to life. He believed that knowledge should be shared generously, not withheld or defended out of pride. As invitations to speak at conferences began arriving, Albert accepted only those that aligned naturally with his schedule. He did not seek publicity. Instead, he chose engagements that allowed him to contribute meaningfully to discussions. When he spoke, he did so with clarity and gentleness, explaining complex ideas in simple terms. Audiences found his calm demeanor refreshing. He brought a sense of stillness to conversations often dominated by intensity. Albert's transition into academia continued to unfold smoothly. His work gained attention across Europe, sparking discussions among physicists who recognized the elegance of his ideas. Yet Albert remained grounded. He continued living simply, spending time with family, and maintaining the routines that had supported him for years. He believed that stability nurtured clarity, and clarity nurtured discovery. Throughout this period, Albert's inner world remained anchored in curiosity. He saw the universe as a vast, interconnected system, filled with subtle patterns and hidden structures. This perspective filled him with quiet wonder. He felt grateful for the opportunity to explore these mysteries, and he approached each new question with patience. Even as responsibilities grew, he protected the reflective space that allowed him to think deeply. As the chapter drew toward its close, Albert sensed that he was moving toward another significant shift. His work at the patent office had served its purpose, nurturing his intellectual development during years of uncertainty. Now academia was offering him the support and recognition he needed to pursue deeper ideas. This transition felt natural, like the gentle change of seasons. He embraced it with gratitude and calm readiness. And as Albert stepped softly into the next stage of his life, he carried with him the patience, humility, and quiet determination that had defined his journey so far. New challenges were approaching, but so were deeper insights that would eventually reveal the hidden shape of space, time, and gravity itself. Albert's transition into academia continued with the same calm steadiness that characterized every stage of his life. Once he accepted his position at the University of Bern, he approached his responsibilities with patience and humility. Each lecture became an opportunity to share ideas, not to assert authority. His students appreciated the quiet clarity of his explanations, even when the concepts themselves were challenging. They sensed that he cared more about their understanding than their performance. Albert still worked part-time at the patent office during this period, valuing the structure it provided. The familiar environment helped anchor him as he adapted to new academic responsibilities. He approached each patent application with the same thoughtful care as before, recognizing that this work continued to sharpen his reasoning. This balance between practical evaluation and theoretical exploration brought harmony to his daily routine. As months passed, Albert began attracting attention from other universities. His work was being cited more frequently, and physicists across Europe discussed his ideas with growing interest. Invitations to collaborate, lecture, and publish continued to arrive. Yet Albert accepted only those that felt aligned with his natural rhythm. He believed that rushing into new commitments would disrupt the clarity of thought that had guided his discoveries. Through this period of increasing recognition, Albert remained deeply humble. He understood that scientific progress was a collective effort, shaped not by individual achievement, but by the gradual accumulation of insights from many thinkers. When colleagues praised his work, he responded with gentle gratitude. He acknowledged that his ideas built upon the foundations laid by scientists who came before him. This perspective reflected his long-standing belief in intellectual humility. Albert's emotional intelligence continued to mature during his early academic years. Teaching required him to connect with students who came from diverse backgrounds and brought different learning styles to the classroom. He learned to listen carefully to their questions, to recognize moments of confusion, and to adjust his explanations without judgment. This sensitivity made his classes more welcoming. Students viewed him as a patient guide rather than an authoritative figure. Outside the classroom, Albert engaged in quiet collaborations with a small group of colleagues. These relationships were marked by mutual respect and shared curiosity. They met in simple offices or local cafes to discuss emerging questions in physics. Their conversations unfolded slowly, filled with thoughtful pauses and moments of contemplation. These gatherings enriched Albert's intellectual life, offering him perspectives that complemented his own. During this time, Albert also deepened his understanding of scientific communication. He recognized that ideas gained clarity through conversation. When colleagues challenged his assumptions or asked for clarification, he welcomed the opportunity to refine his thinking. He viewed dialogue not as a debate to be won, but as a shared journey toward understanding. This mindset allowed him to build strong relationships within the scientific community. In his personal life, Albert maintained the gentle routines that had supported him for years. He played the violin in the evenings, letting the music help him unwind after long days of teaching and research. He cooked simple meals, valuing nourishment over extravagance. He continued taking long walks, using them as opportunities to think deeply about emerging ideas. These routines provided continuity during a time of change. Albert's growing recognition did not disrupt his sense of balance. If anything, it reinforced his belief that clarity came from quiet reflection, not from external achievement. He continued approaching science with humility, understanding that the universe held mysteries far beyond human comprehension. This humility strengthened his resilience, allowing him to navigate both praise and criticism with equanimity. During moments of solitude, Albert returned to questions that had followed him since childhood. He wondered about the nature of gravity, the shape of space, and the possibility that time itself might be influenced by matter. These reflections were gentle, not urgent. They moved through him like soft whispers, prompting deeper contemplation. He sensed that his earlier work was only the beginning of a much larger journey. Albert's curiosity about gravity grew particularly strong during this period. He observed that Newton's laws, while effective, did not fully address the complexities revealed by modern physics. He questioned how gravity interacted with the space-time framework introduced by special relativity. These reflections stirred softly within him. He felt that a deeper, more elegant explanation must exist, one that connected motion, energy, space, and time in a unified structure. At the university, Albert continued earning the respect of his students and colleagues. His lectures grew in attendance, and young physicists sought his guidance. Yet he maintained his modest lifestyle. He walked to lectures with old books tucked under his arm, dressed simply, and greeted each student with kindness. The contrast between his growing influence and his gentle manner made him a beloved figure within the academic community. Albert's confidence continued to mature during this chapter. It was not the loud, assertive confidence that some associated with scientific leadership. Instead, it was soft, steady, and grounded in clarity. He trusted his reasoning, but he remained open to new perspectives. This balance allowed him to explore ambitious ideas without losing his sense of humility. It also helped him maintain emotional stability during periods of intense intellectual effort. As his responsibilities grew, Albert became more intentional about protecting quiet moments for reflection. He understood that meaningful insights often emerged during stillness. He set aside time each day to think without interruption, whether while walking through the city or sitting quietly in his study. These moments became essential to his creative process. They allowed his thoughts to settle and reorganize naturally. By now, Albert's early work had gained widespread recognition, and his name appeared in scientific journals across Europe. Yet he continued seeing himself as a student of the universe rather than a master of it. This humility kept him grounded, even as invitations arrived from prestigious institutions. He responded to each opportunity thoughtfully, choosing the path that felt most aligned with his values. As this chapter neared its closing moments, Albert sensed that he was approaching another profound shift. His reflections on gravity were growing stronger, forming the early seeds of what would become one of the greatest scientific achievements in history. He did not yet know where these thoughts would lead, but he felt ready, softly, patiently, and steadily, to follow them wherever they pointed. And as he stepped gently into the next stage of his journey, Albert carried with him the same quiet curiosity that had guided him through every moment of his life. New discoveries waited just beyond the horizon, ready to reveal themselves to a mind shaped by humility, patience, and wonder. Albert entered this stage of his life with a calm awareness that the world around him was beginning to shift. His discoveries from the miracle year had circulated widely, and scientists across Europe were now engaging deeply with his ideas. Some wrote with admiration, others with curiosity, and a few with cautious skepticism. Yet Albert welcomed every response with the same gentle humility. He understood that new ideas required time, patience, and respectful dialogue before settling into the larger tapestry of science. As recognition slowly expanded, Albert found that people approached him differently. Students viewed him not just as a lecturer, but as someone whose ideas had already begun shaping modern physics. Colleagues invited him into conversations that once felt out of reach. Yet Albert remained grounded, speaking softly and listening with care. He believed that intelligence revealed itself through clarity, not volume, and he carried this belief into every interaction. During these years, Albert accepted a more formal academic position, leaving the patent office behind. The transition was gentle, marked not by celebration, but by a deep sense of gratitude. The patent office had provided him with stability and space during a formative period of his life, and he looked back on it with warmth. Now, however, he felt ready to devote himself fully to teaching and research. This decision emerged naturally, like a leaf falling at the end of a quiet season. In his new academic role, Albert found himself surrounded by young physicists eager to learn from him. He approached each lecture with patience, explaining complex concepts gradually and allowing students time to absorb the material. He avoided rushing through ideas, choosing instead to build understanding layer by layer. This approach helped create an atmosphere of calm inquiry, one where students felt safe to ask questions and explore uncertainty. Despite the growing recognition, Albert's lifestyle remained simple. He lived in modest apartments, often cluttered with books, papers, and half-finished calculations. He cooked simple meals, choosing practicality over extravagance. Music continued to play an essential role in his life, with the violin offering him comfort after long days of teaching and reflection. These familiar routines helped him stay balanced as his responsibilities expanded. During this time, Albert became increasingly aware of the need to maintain emotional steadiness. Praise and criticism arrived in equal measure, and he felt the weight of new expectations. Yet he approached these pressures with the same calm acceptance that had guided him through earlier challenges. He understood that recognition could be fleeting and that true fulfillment came from the quiet pursuit of understanding. This belief helped him remain centered. Albert's correspondence with scientists around the world grew steadily. Letters arrived daily, filled with questions, ideas, and invitations. He responded to each one thoughtfully, though some required more time than others. These exchanges deepened his connection to the international scientific community, helping him understand the diverse perspectives that shaped modern physics. He valued these conversations, seeing them as an extension of the curiosity he had cultivated since childhood. During quiet evenings, Albert often reflected on how much his life had changed. He remembered the years when his papers went unnoticed, when academic positions were scarce, and when recognition felt distant. Now, those challenges felt like gentle stepping stones rather than obstacles. He recognized that each difficult moment had shaped him, teaching him patience, humility, and resilience. These lessons formed the emotional foundation upon which his work now rested. Despite his growing influence, Albert remained deeply curious about unresolved questions in physics. He felt particularly drawn to the nature of gravity, sensing that existing theories did not fully capture the complexity of the physical world. He approached this question with his usual patience, revisiting old ideas and exploring new possibilities. He sensed that a deeper truth waited to be uncovered, but he did not rush the process. He trusted that clarity would arrive slowly, as it always had. During this period, Albert began working more closely with graduate students who admired his calm teaching style. He encouraged them to think independently, to question assumptions, and to follow their curiosity without fear. These interactions strengthened his role as a mentor. He saw teaching not as a transfer of information, but as a shared journey toward understanding. This perspective reflected his lifelong belief that education required patience and compassion. Albert also participated in academic conferences, though he chose only those that felt meaningful. He disliked grand displays of prestige and avoided any environment that encouraged competition over cooperation. When he did speak publicly, his voice remained gentle and steady. He focused on clarity rather than persuasion, offering ideas with humility and inviting questions with sincerity. Audiences appreciated his calm presence, finding it refreshing in a field often filled with intensity. The scientific community continued responding to Albert's work with increasing respect. His ideas influenced new lines of research, inspiring physicists around the world. Yet Albert remained unaware of the growing admiration around him. He believed that every idea should stand on its own, independent of its author. This humility protected him from vanity and kept him rooted in the quiet pursuit of truth. As he continued exploring the nature of gravity, Albert realized that he would need to revisit fundamental principles. He sensed that space and time themselves might play a more active role in the structure of the universe. These thoughts emerged gradually during long walks, late-night reflections, and hours spent at his desk. He allowed each idea to settle before exploring it further. This slow process gave him the emotional clarity he needed. Albert's family continued to support him during these demanding years. They offered warmth, stability, and gentle encouragement. They reminded him that life extended beyond equations and theories, grounding him in everyday joys. Albert treasured these relationships, understanding that emotional support was essential to his mental well-being. Their presence softened the challenges of academic life. As the chapter progressed, Albert's reputation grew beyond the scientific community. Journalists began taking interest in his ideas, though he felt uncomfortable with public attention. He preferred quiet spaces to crowded rooms and thoughtful discussions to interviews. Still, he handled these new experiences with patience, viewing them as part of his evolving role. He maintained his values through it all, staying true to his quiet nature. During moments of solitude, Albert felt a soft sense of anticipation. He sensed that the ideas he was exploring would eventually lead to something profound. Yet he placed no pressure on himself. He trusted that insight would arrive when it was ready. This trust allowed him to work without fear of failure. It gave him the emotional space needed to think deeply and creatively. And as this stage of his journey drew to a close, Albert found himself standing gently at the threshold of a new frontier. A frontier shaped by patience, curiosity, and the quiet strength that had guided him his entire life. Soon he would begin the work that would redefine gravity itself. Albert entered this next stage with a sense of calm determination. Although the challenges ahead were greater than any he had previously faced, he approached them with the same gentle patience that shaped his entire life. He understood that developing a new theory of gravity would require deep reflection, careful reasoning, and emotional resilience. This understanding allowed him to move forward without fear. He trusted that the universe revealed its secrets slowly. As Albert explored new ideas, he spent long hours contemplating the relationship between space, time, and matter. He sensed that gravity was not simply a force acting at a distance, but something more subtle, something woven into the structure of reality itself. These thoughts moved through him softly, guiding him toward new lines of inquiry. He followed each idea patiently, even when the path felt uncertain. During this period, Albert often retreated into long moments of solitude. He walked through quiet neighborhoods, letting the rhythm of his steps help him think. He watched how shadows shifted across buildings, how light curved around corners, and how motion revealed itself in small details. These observations nourished his curiosity. They reminded him that nature communicated through patterns waiting to be understood. Even as he worked on these profound ideas, Albert continued teaching and mentoring students. He found that explaining foundational concepts helped him clarify his own thinking. When students struggled, he responded with patience, using gentle examples to guide them toward understanding. These teaching moments enriched his reflections, reminding him that complex ideas could often be expressed in simple, elegant ways. Albert's work on gravity required mathematical tools beyond those he had used before. He sought help from colleagues who understood advanced geometry, approaching them with humility. He asked questions carefully, listened attentively, and absorbed new concepts with quiet determination. These collaborations deepened his respect for the collective nature of science. He understood that discovery rarely happened in isolation. As the months passed, Albert encountered many intellectual challenges. Some ideas that seemed promising at first led to dead ends. Other calculations revealed contradictions he had not anticipated. Yet he did not become discouraged. He approached each setback with calm curiosity, viewing them as part of the natural process of understanding. This resilience allowed him to continue moving forward, even when progress felt slow. During periods of doubt, Albert often turned to music. Playing the violin allowed him to step away from the intensity of his thoughts. The gentle vibrations of the strings helped him relax, clearing his mind and restoring emotional balance. In these musical moments, he felt connected to something larger than himself, a quiet reminder that creativity flowed through both art and science. Albert's family provided steady support during these challenging years. They offered quiet encouragement, warm meals, and companionship that grounded him emotionally. Their presence reminded him that life was richer than the pursuit of discovery alone. These relationships helped him maintain perspective, ensuring that his identity remained whole even as he pursued ambitious ideas. As Albert's work progressed, he began to glimpse the outline of a new understanding. He realized that gravity might be explained not as a force, but as a curvature of space and time. This idea felt both radical and natural. It resonated with his intuition in a way that earlier theories had not. He approached this insight carefully, testing each part with gentle scrutiny. Slowly, the pieces began to align. Even with this growing clarity, Albert remained patient. He understood that a beautiful idea required rigorous validation. He returned to his equations, refining them with care. He redrew diagrams, tested assumptions, and explored the implications of his new perspective. This deliberate process revealed the depth of his dedication. He valued truth more than speed, understanding more than recognition. Albert shared parts of his developing theory with close colleagues. They responded with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Some found his ideas inspiring, while others struggled to grasp the implications. Albert welcomed both reactions. He believed that skepticism was a natural part of scientific progress. He listened respectfully to every concern, using them to strengthen his reasoning. The more Albert refined his thoughts, the more he sensed the profound implications of his theory. He realized that if space and time could bend, then the universe itself was dynamic and interconnected. This understanding filled him with quiet wonder. It deepened his appreciation for the elegance of nature. He saw the universe not as a mechanical system, but as a flowing, continuous fabric shaped by matter and energy. Working toward such a monumental idea required emotional steadiness. Albert protected his quiet routines, ensuring that he maintained balance as the work intensified. He continued taking long walks, continued reading philosophy, and continued playing music. These routines grounded him during moments of uncertainty, reminding him that life's rhythms extended beyond intellectual pursuits. As he neared completion of his gravitational theory, Albert felt a gentle sense of readiness. He knew that his ideas were finally taking coherent form. He approached the final steps with calm confidence, trusting the process that had guided him for years. When he completed the mathematical framework, he experienced a soft moment of satisfaction, not excitement, but a deep, quiet recognition that something meaningful had been achieved. When he finally presented his new theory of gravity, later known as general relativity, Albert did so with humility. He explained the concept slowly, allowing listeners time to absorb the implications. He made no grand claims, choosing instead to let the ideas speak for themselves. His calm presentation contrasted the monumental nature of the discovery, leaving a lasting impression on all who heard him. The scientific community responded with growing admiration. Some were initially skeptical, but many recognized the elegance and simplicity of the theory. Albert received letters expressing amazement, gratitude, and thoughtful inquiry. These responses warmed him gently, though he remained modest in their wake. He believed that the significance of the theory belonged to humanity, not to him alone. As this chapter of his life drew to its close, Albert reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. He saw how each stage, childhood curiosity, school struggles, patent office discipline, and academic growth, had prepared him quietly for this achievement. None of the steps felt wasted. Each moment had shaped his mind and strengthened his resilience. And as he stepped softly into the next stage of his life, Albert carried with him a new understanding of the universe, one born not from intensity but from patience, humility, and quiet wonder. Soon, the world would learn just how deeply this gentle discovery would reshape our understanding of existence itself. Albert entered this new phase of life with a calm awareness that the world now saw him differently. His theory of general relativity had begun to circulate quietly through scientific circles, sparking interest curiosity, and a growing sense of wonder. The idea that space and time could bend was something extraordinary, and even those who did not fully understand the mathematics sensed that something profound had happened. Yet Albert remained gentle in his reactions, responding with the same humility he carried through every chapter of his life. He approached this moment not as a personal triumph, but as a part of science's long unfolding journey. At home, nothing about Albert's behavior changed. He still enjoyed simple meals, played the violin in the evenings, and took long walks when he needed clarity. He greeted each day with patience, believing that routine helped him stay grounded while the world's attention slowly expanded around him. His family observed that he remained the same thoughtful, soft-spoken person he had always been. This consistency reassured them as his name began appearing more frequently in newspapers and journals. As months passed, invitations began arriving from universities across Europe. Some institutions wanted him to lecture, while others hoped to recruit him as a full-time professor. Albert approached each invitation with careful consideration. He did not seek prestige, nor did he chase opportunity for its own sake. Instead, he chose engagements that aligned with his natural rhythm, places where he felt he could contribute meaningfully without sacrificing the quiet routines that allowed him to think clearly. The first major public validation of Einstein's work came when astronomers began preparing to test his predictions about starlight bending around the sun. This test required an eclipse, something that only occurred under specific circumstances. Einstein followed the preparations with interest but kept his expectations measured. He knew that even if the initial observations failed, it did not mean the theory was wrong. He believed in the slow, careful nature of scientific progress. During these months, Albert continued refining his ideas and exploring the implications of general relativity. He examined how mass influenced the curvature of space-time and considered the consequences of these principles on large-scale cosmic structures. These reflections filled him with quiet wonder. He felt as though the universe was gradually revealing hidden aspects of itself, offering glimpses into deeper layers of reality that had long remained unnoticed. Albert's interactions with students became increasingly meaningful during this time. Young physicists admired his calm presence and thoughtful explanations. They appreciated that he listened to their questions without judgment, allowing them to explore ideas without fear of being dismissed. Albert encouraged them to think independently, believing that genuine understanding could not be rushed. This approach helped build a nurturing academic environment where curiosity flourished. Despite the growing interest in his work, Albert remained cautious about being placed on a pedestal. He understood that fame could distort the meaning of scientific discovery, turning it into spectacle rather than inquiry. He hoped to remain focused on the essence of his work, understanding the universe with clarity and humility. This desire kept him steady even as public curiosity increased. When the solar eclipse expedition finally took place, Albert followed the news with gentle anticipation. He knew the results would take time to analyze, and he carried no expectations of immediate validation. Instead, he continued teaching, writing, and reflecting, letting the days unfold naturally. He trusted that whatever the outcome, the work itself held intrinsic value. During this period, Albert experienced moments of quiet introspection. He wondered how life might change if the eclipse results supported his theory. He also wondered what responsibilities might accompany wider recognition. These thoughts brought both curiosity and a need for emotional grounding. Yet he did not worry. He trusted his ability to remain humble regardless of external circumstances. When confirmation finally arrived that starlight had indeed bent in the way his theory predicted, the world responded with overwhelming enthusiasm. Newspapers celebrated him, journalists sought interviews, and universities issued public statements praising his work. The sudden surge of attention contrasted sharply with the soft rhythms of Albert's daily life. Still, he approached the moment with characteristic gentleness. He expressed gratitude, offered thoughtful explanations, and avoided dramatizing the discovery. The rise of fame invited Albert into social spaces he once avoided. He was invited to dinners, lectures, and public gatherings where people wished to meet the man behind the theory that had reshaped physics. Although he preferred quiet settings, he accepted these invitations when he felt they served a purpose. He remained soft-spoken in every environment, offering insights without arrogance. People found his humility refreshing. Even as fame grew, Albert continued nurturing the quiet habits that had shaped his mind. He protected time for reading, thinking, and walking. He maintained the same bedtime routines and played the same pieces on his violin. These simple habits kept him connected to himself, reminding him that the core of his identity lay not in public attention, but in curiosity. Albert also became more aware of the emotional needs of those around him. He recognized that his increasing visibility placed pressure on his family, who now found themselves in the public eye unexpectedly. He responded with patience and reassurance, prioritizing their comfort above any professional obligation. This sensitivity helped maintain harmony at home during a time of significant change. In academic settings, Albert found himself guiding a new generation of thinkers. Students and colleagues approached him not just for technical insight, but for emotional encouragement. They admired his ability to remain calm under pressure and sought to emulate his gentle persistence. Albert approached mentorship with care, understanding that each student required their own balance of guidance and independence. Despite the growing public fascination with his work, Albert remained focused on advancing scientific understanding. He continued exploring new questions, questioning assumptions, and refining his theories. He believed that recognition should never halt the pursuit of knowledge. Instead, he saw fame as a reminder that the world cared about science, a responsibility he approached with quiet dignity. By the time this chapter began drawing to a close, Einstein had become a respected figure far beyond the scientific community. Yet he carried this status with humility, viewing it as an opportunity to encourage thoughtful inquiry. He refused to let fame shape his identity, preferring instead to remain grounded in the values that had guided him since childhood. And as he stepped gently into the next stage of his journey, Albert understood that recognition brought new responsibilities. Responsibilities he would navigate with the same patience, humility, and quiet strength that had defined his life so far. Albert entered this next phase of life with a quiet awareness that his role in the world was expanding. Fame had brought him into conversations far beyond physics, inviting him to consider broader responsibilities. People sought his perspective not only on scientific matters, but on education, society, and the peaceful direction of humanity. Albert did not chase these responsibilities, but he accepted them slowly, guided by humility. He believed that influence should be used carefully, with respect for the quiet voices that often went unheard. As invitations continued to arrive, Albert learned to choose his engagements thoughtfully. He focused on activities that aligned with his values, prioritizing opportunities for meaningful dialogue over public spectacle. When he did speak, he used a soft tone that encouraged reflection rather than excitement. Audiences found his calm presence grounding, especially in a world that was beginning to shift rapidly. His gentle clarity became a welcomed counterbalance to the noise of public life. Einstein's new responsibilities required him to travel more frequently. He visited universities, attended conferences, and met with scientists who wished to discuss the implications of his theories. These travels broadened his understanding of global scientific perspectives. Yet they also reminded him of the importance of maintaining emotional equilibrium. He learned to balance outward activity with inward reflection, making time for quiet moments even during busy trips. During these travels, Albert developed a deeper appreciation for cultural diversity. He observed how different societies approached learning, creativity, and community. These observations strengthened his belief that knowledge belonged to everyone, not just to institutions or experts. He spoke softly about the importance of accessible education, encouraging societies to nurture curiosity in children. His message carried warmth and sincerity, resonating across cultural boundaries. At home, Albert remained a source of stability for his family. Despite his increasing responsibilities, he made an effort to maintain predictable routines. He listened to his loved ones with patience and offered reassurance when life felt overwhelming. He understood that while his work influenced the world, his presence influenced the emotional well-being of those closest to him. This awareness helped him maintain a gentle balance between public and private life. Albert's relationships with colleagues also deepened during this time. He collaborated on new scientific questions, approached debates with humility, and encouraged young scientists to pursue ideas that challenged conventional thinking. His colleagues admired his generosity of spirit. They appreciated that he viewed science as a shared journey rather than a competition. This attitude helped create an atmosphere of mutual respect. As the world's interest in science grew, Albert's role as a scientific communicator became more prominent. He wrote articles explaining complex ideas in simple terms, hoping to make his theories accessible to non-scientists. He believed that the beauty of physics should be shared widely, not confined to academic circles. His gentle writing style helped bridge the gap between expertise and curiosity, allowing more people to appreciate the wonder of the universe. Einstein also found himself participating in peaceful discussions about humanity's future. He was asked about the role of science in society, the importance of international collaboration, and the value of intellectual freedom. Albert responded with calm honesty, emphasizing the need for compassion and understanding. He believed that scientific progress carried responsibility, a belief that shaped his guidance to leaders and educators alike. As his influence grew, Albert remained mindful of the emotional challenges that accompanied public life. He understood that visibility could create distance, making it harder to maintain genuine connections. To counter this, he continued nurturing simple habits: walking, reading, listening to music, and spending quiet evenings with family. These routines helped him stay grounded, reminding him that peace often came from the smallest moments. During this period, Albert devoted time to mentoring young physicists who looked to him for guidance. He encouraged them to remain patient with themselves, reminding them that understanding unfolded slowly. He shared stories of his own struggles, hoping to reassure them that uncertainty was a natural part of discovery. His gentle honesty created a supportive atmosphere where students felt safe to explore daring ideas. As he continued refining his theories, Albert encountered new questions that inspired further reflection. He wondered how relativity might interact with emerging ideas in quantum physics. He questioned whether the universe had boundaries or whether it extended infinitely. These questions did not overwhelm him. Instead, they filled him with the same quiet wonder that had guided him since childhood. Each new question felt like an invitation to explore deeper truths. Albert's leadership style remained soft and collaborative. He did not command attention through authority. Instead, people gravitated toward him because of his sincerity. His influence grew not from power, but from the steady calmness he carried into every conversation. This gentle approach helped stabilize discussions that might have otherwise become tense. He believed that clarity required peace, not pressure. As Einstein's fame reached new heights, he received numerous awards and honorary titles. He accepted them with gratitude, but without attachment. He viewed such honors as acknowledgments of the work, not of himself. This humility kept him grounded during moments that might have inflated another person's ego. He remained focused on the quiet joy of exploration. Despite the expanding demands of public life, Albert continued nurturing his inner world. He set aside time to think deeply, allowing ideas to unfold at their natural pace. He did not rush toward new discoveries. Instead, he trusted that insights would emerge when they were ready. This trust reflected the emotional maturity he had cultivated throughout his life. As this chapter reached its closing moments, Albert found himself viewed not just as a scientist, but as a stabilizing presence in a world undergoing rapid change. His calm voice offered reassurance. His humility inspired reflection. His curiosity encouraged openness. He understood that his role extended beyond equations, that he had become a gentle guide during an era of shifting beliefs and expanding possibilities. And as he stepped quietly into the next stage of his journey, Albert carried with him a deep sense of responsibility, a responsibility he would navigate with the same patience, compassion, and quiet brilliance that had defined every moment of his life. Albert entered this new stage of life with a calm awareness that the world was becoming more complicated. Political tensions were rising across Europe, conversations were shifting in tone, and societies were preparing for changes that many felt, but few fully understood. Einstein observed these developments quietly, sensing that the world was slowly moving away from the familiar patterns of the past. Even though he focused primarily on science, he could not ignore the broader atmosphere surrounding him. The world seemed to be watching him more closely now, expecting clarity in a time of confusion. As his reputation grew internationally, Albert found himself receiving more letters than ever before. Some came from scientists seeking guidance, others from students asking for advice, and many from ordinary people who simply wished to express admiration. Einstein read each letter with gratitude, responding with kindness whenever time allowed. These letters reminded him that his work had reached people far beyond the academic community. He felt humbled by the trust people placed in him. During this time, Albert also traveled more frequently, visiting universities and research centers around the world. These trips were often long and tiring, but he approached them with patience. He viewed each journey as an opportunity to share ideas and learn from others. Whether he stood before a small group of students or a large international audience, he maintained the same gentle tone. His calmness made complex ideas feel accessible, giving listeners confidence even when the topics felt overwhelming. Einstein's travels introduced him to new scientific cultures and perspectives. In every country he visited, he observed the unique ways scientists approached research and collaboration. He appreciated the diversity of thought he encountered and often returned home with renewed curiosity. These experiences widened his understanding of the scientific world, helping him recognize the importance of global cooperation. He believed that knowledge grew stronger when shared across borders. At home, however, life remained simple. Albert continued to enjoy quiet evenings with family, reading books and playing music. He often spent his mornings walking through familiar neighborhoods before beginning his work. These routines became increasingly important as public demands on his time expanded. They offered him grounding and peace, allowing him to remain centered despite growing responsibilities. His family valued these moments, cherishing the calm presence he brought into their lives. As political tensions increased across Europe, Einstein felt a growing responsibility to promote peace. He understood the fragility of international relations and believed that open dialogue could help prevent conflict. Though he disliked public speaking in stressful environments, he participated in peace organizations with gentle determination. He did not seek to become a political figure, but he felt compelled to advocate for understanding and cooperation. His soft-spoken voice carried weight precisely because it came from a place of sincerity. Einstein's reputation as a humanitarian grew just as quickly as his scientific influence. People admired his calm perspective on global issues, finding comfort in his steady outlook. He emphasized the importance of kindness, empathy, and intellectual humility, values he had carried since childhood. These qualities helped make him a stabilizing presence during uncertain times. Even those who disagreed with him respected his sincerity. Despite his increasing public role, Einstein never abandoned his scientific pursuits. He continued refining his theories, exploring new ideas, and contributing to academic discussions. His dedication to understanding the universe remained unwavering. He believed that science offered a way to connect humanity, providing a shared foundation of curiosity and discovery. This belief guided him through moments of external pressure. Einstein's colleagues admired his ability to balance public expectations with intellectual focus. They noticed how he maintained calmness even during demanding periods. His quiet determination inspired those around him, reminding them that meaningful progress came from patience rather than urgency. He encouraged younger scientists to stay grounded, advising them to follow their curiosity without fear of judgment. During moments of solitude, Albert often reflected on the unexpected path his life had taken. He remembered the years of uncertainty at the patent office, the rejection from academic institutions, and the quiet persistence that had carried him forward. Now, as he navigated a world that looked to him for clarity, he felt grateful for those early challenges. They had taught him resilience, humility, and the value of staying true to oneself. As this chapter progressed, Albert found himself increasingly in the position of mediator. People sought his opinion on global issues, hoping he could offer a scientific perspective that brought calm to emotional debates. Though he never claimed to have all the answers, he offered thoughtful observations rooted in compassion. He believed that understanding grew from listening, and he carried this belief into every conversation. Albert's calm leadership style became especially important as the world entered a more turbulent period. His gentle approach helped bridge gaps between different communities. Whether he spoke with scientists, politicians, or ordinary citizens, he made people feel heard. This emotional intelligence strengthened his ability to navigate complex situations without becoming overwhelmed. He viewed each interaction as an opportunity to encourage kindness and thoughtful reflection. As this phase of his life drew toward its close, Albert sensed that even greater responsibilities awaited him. The world was changing quickly, and he understood that his role would soon shift from quiet scientist to global symbol. Yet he approached this transition with the same humility he brought to every challenge. He trusted that his values, patience, curiosity, compassion, would guide him through whatever came next. And as he stepped softly into the next part of his journey, Albert carried with him a deep sense of purpose, a purpose rooted not in fame, but in the quiet belief that understanding had the power to bring people closer together. Albert entered this next chapter with a calm awareness that the world around him was growing increasingly complex. Political movements were rising across Europe, and social tensions were becoming more visible. People worried about the future, unsure of what direction the world was heading. Einstein watched these changes with quiet concern. He sensed that the stability he cherished was slowly dissolving, replaced by new uncertainties that required patience and clarity. During this time, Einstein's personal life also underwent significant changes. Shifts in relationships, new responsibilities, and growing pressure from the public created moments of emotional strain. Yet Albert approached these challenges with the same steady calm that shaped his scientific work. He believed that emotional resilience came from accepting reality gently rather than resisting it. This belief allowed him to navigate difficult transitions with grace. His scientific responsibilities continued to expand. He received invitations to join academies, collaborate with international researchers, and contribute to discussions on global scientific policy. These opportunities reflected the trust people placed in him. Albert accepted many of these invitations because he believed that science offered a path toward global unity. Still, he remained mindful of his emotional limits. He declined engagements that felt overwhelming, protecting the quiet space he needed for reflection. Albert also became increasingly aware of the role he played as a public figure. Newspapers wrote about him frequently, sometimes accurately, and sometimes not. People recognized him on the street, approaching him with questions or admiration. Though he appreciated their kindness, he remained cautious. He valued privacy and understood that fame often created misunderstandings. He responded politely to those who approached him, offering warm smiles and gentle words. As political tensions intensified, Albert began receiving letters from people seeking his help. Some asked him to support social causes, while others asked for guidance during moments of fear. He read each letter carefully, responding with compassion whenever possible. These messages reminded him that humanity often turned to figures of calm during moments of uncertainty. He felt humbled by this trust, though he carried it lightly. Einstein's commitment to peace deepened during this time. He participated in discussions about international cooperation, disarmament, and the importance of diplomacy. His voice carried weight, not because of authority, but because of sincerity. He believed that kindness could coexist with scientific rigor, and that empathy had a place in global conversations. His calm approach offered a sense of stability during discussions often dominated by emotionally charged opinions. Despite the growing pressures around him, Albert continued nurturing his scientific curiosity. He explored new questions related to cosmology, the structure of the universe, and the interplay between quantum physics and relativity. These questions fascinated him quietly. They offered him the opportunity to step away from public concerns and return to the realm of pure thought, an environment where he felt most at peace. Einstein also became increasingly involved in mentoring young scientists. He sensed that they would inherit a world full of challenges and wanted to offer them support. He encouraged them to remain patient, to trust their intuition, and to pursue truth even when the path felt unclear. His gentle guidance helped shape a generation of thinkers who valued both scientific insight and emotional understanding. During this chapter, Albert began preparing himself for the possibility that political changes in Europe might affect his life directly. He observed how certain groups gained power and how public sentiment shifted. He recognized that the world he had known was changing rapidly. Yet he refused to let fear dictate his choices. He remained committed to speaking honestly, advocating for peace, and supporting those who faced oppression. Einstein's calm resilience continued to inspire people. His willingness to remain steady during turbulent times made him a symbol of thoughtful leadership. He spoke with clarity but never with anger, offering insights that encouraged reflection. His voice became a gentle anchor for those who felt lost. Even in uncertainty, he reminded people that understanding and compassion could guide humanity forward. At home, Einstein remained grounded in simple pleasures. He continued walking through familiar streets, playing his violin, and reading late into the night. These routines sustained him emotionally, giving him space to rest and recharge. He valued the quiet moments that helped him remain centered, despite the pressures of public life. His family appreciated his consistency, finding comfort in his steady presence. As time passed, Albert realized that he was transitioning into a new role. He was no longer just a scientist or a public figure. He had become something more subtle, a stabilizing presence in a world that felt increasingly fragile. He held this role gently, always mindful of the responsibility it carried. He believed that clarity, patience, and empathy were the most important contributions he could offer. As this chapter neared its end, Einstein reflected on how profoundly the world had changed during his lifetime. He saw how science had advanced, how societies had shifted, and how global relationships had evolved. Yet he also saw how much remained uncertain. He recognized that humanity needed calm voices, steady minds, and gentle leadership more than ever before. This understanding strengthened his commitment to advocating for peace and truth. And as he stepped quietly into the next chapter of his life, Albert carried with him the soft strength that had guided him since childhood. A strength rooted in humility, compassion, and the quiet belief that understanding could light even the darkest path. Albert entered this chapter with a gentle awareness that the world he loved was changing rapidly. He sensed these changes not through dramatic events, but through quiet shifts in the atmosphere around him. Conversations felt different, public attitudes grew more uncertain, and the tone of political discussions carried a faint tension that had not been present before. Einstein observed these developments with patient attention, understanding that societies often moved through cycles of stability and unease. He hoped the world would find its balance again, though a soft worry began to settle quietly at the edges of his thoughts. Throughout these early moments, Einstein continued focusing on his work with steady dedication. He attended lectures, met with colleagues, and explored new ideas in physics that intrigued him deeply. Yet even during these scientific pursuits, he felt subtle reminders that the social environment outside the academic world was shifting. He noticed the ways people spoke more cautiously and how public gatherings carried an undercurrent of concern. These observations did not interrupt his calm demeanor, but they added a layer of reflection to his days. Albert received an increasing number of letters from friends and acquaintances expressing concern about the political direction of Europe. Some wrote about anxieties in their communities, while others described changes in local policies that felt restrictive. Einstein read these letters carefully, offering warm replies that encouraged patience and compassion. He hoped that kindness would help counterbalance the rising uncertainty. Still, he recognized that fear often spread quietly, taking root before people fully understood its influence. At the university, Einstein continued teaching with gentle dedication. His students appreciated the calm refuge his classroom provided from the shifting environment outside. He noticed that they listened more intently now, as though seeking reassurance, not only in physics, but in the steady tone of his voice. Albert approached each lesson with slightly more care, understanding that stability could be as comforting as knowledge during times of change. He believed that education offered emotional grounding as much as intellectual insight. Einstein's home life remained a place of quiet continuity. He spent evenings reading by lamplight or playing soft melodies on his violin. These routines offered him peace, helping him separate the noise of the world from the clarity of his thoughts. Occasionally, during moments of stillness, he reflected on how quickly societies could change. He understood that history moved in cycles, and he hoped that rational conversation would prevail before tensions grew too strong. His hope carried a gentle sincerity, shaped by his lifelong belief in the power of understanding. As months passed, Einstein noticed that some of his colleagues were becoming more vocal about their concerns. They discussed shifts in political power and changes in public attitudes toward academic institutions. Albert listened with patience, offering calm perspectives without escalating their anxieties. He believed that fear often created unnecessary tension, and he hoped his soft-spoken reasoning could help provide balance. Still, he acknowledged privately that the concerns were not without merit. International invitations continued to reach Albert, offering him opportunities to visit universities in other countries. These invitations carried a new sense of importance, as colleagues abroad expressed genuine concern for his safety and well-being. Einstein appreciated their kindness but approached each decision thoughtfully. He valued his home, his students, and his familiar routines. He preferred stability over sudden relocation, and he hoped the situation in Europe would improve before long. Einstein's growing global visibility brought additional challenges. As his name appeared more frequently in newspapers, He received a mixture of admiration and criticism. Some praised his scientific achievements, while others expressed political opinions connected to rising tensions. Albert read these articles with equanimity, declining to respond publicly. He believed that engaging in heated debates would only deepen divides. Instead, he focused on maintaining a calm, steady presence in everything he did. Albert also recognized that his identity as a scientist and public figure placed him in a unique position. People looked to him not only for scientific insight, but for moral clarity. When he spoke about peace, equality, or compassion, listeners found comfort in his sincerity. Einstein felt a gentle responsibility to continue offering this voice of calm, especially as anxieties grew. He approached this responsibility with humility, understanding that influence should always be used with care. During moments of private reflection, Einstein began to consider what it might mean to leave Europe, even temporarily. The idea felt unfamiliar, almost unsettling. Europe had shaped his childhood, his education, and his intellectual identity. Yet he also recognized that safety was becoming a more delicate matter than before. He was cautious not to rush these reflections, allowing his thoughts to unfold naturally. He understood that clarity required time. Despite these uncertainties, Einstein continued nurturing his curiosity. He worked on new scientific papers, explored deeper questions related to cosmology, and maintained correspondence with researchers around the world. This ongoing connection to global science gave him comfort. It reminded him that knowledge transcended borders, offering a quiet sense of unity that contrasted the increasing tension in daily life. These intellectual exchanges helped him stay grounded. As time progressed, Einstein noticed more direct signs that the environment around him was becoming unstable. Certain policies shifted, certain groups gained influence, and certain conversations became more cautious. He observed these changes with quiet realism. He did not panic, nor did he ignore the evidence. Instead, he allowed himself to acknowledge the evolving landscape while maintaining the calmness that defined him. This balance protected his peace of mind. Einstein's colleagues grew increasingly worried about him. Some urged him to relocate for safety, offering support and resources. Others expressed concern but remained hopeful that the situation would improve. Albert listened to each of them with gratitude. He appreciated their concern, but he did not want to make decisions based on fear. He preferred to wait until the path forward became clearer. This gentle patience reflected the emotional steadiness he carried throughout life. As this chapter neared its closing moments, Einstein recognized that the world was entering a new era. The familiar rhythms of daily life were beginning to feel uncertain, shaped by forces beyond individual influence. Yet he remained confident in the power of reason and compassion. He believed that understanding would ultimately guide humanity through turbulence. This belief had accompanied him since childhood, and it offered comfort now. And as he stood quietly at the edge of this shifting world, Albert sensed that a significant decision was approaching, one that would soon guide him away from the place he had long called home. But he would meet that decision with calm clarity, just as he had met every challenge before. Albert entered this part of his journey with a growing understanding that remaining in Europe might no longer be sustainable. The atmosphere around him continued shifting, becoming heavier and more uncertain. Friends urged him to travel for safety, colleagues offered him temporary positions abroad, and letters from acquaintances described growing instability in detail. Einstein processed each message with quiet reflection. He knew that the decision to leave his homeland carried both emotional weight and practical considerations. During this time, Einstein received an invitation to lecture in the United States. The offer came at a moment when tensions in Europe were steadily rising. Though he had traveled internationally before, this invitation felt different. It offered not only academic opportunity, but a chance to step away from the growing uncertainty at home. Einstein approached the offer thoughtfully, discussing it with close friends and family. He wanted to ensure that the decision was made with clarity rather than fear. Albert eventually accepted the invitation, planning to travel for a limited period. He believed that the temporary journey would give him space to think, reflect, and observe from a distance. His family supported the decision, understanding that a short departure might provide emotional clarity. Einstein prepared for the trip with calm deliberation, packing only what he needed and leaving behind the rest. He felt a gentle sadness as he looked around his home, but he remained steady. The journey across the ocean offered Einstein time for quiet contemplation. He spent long hours walking the ship's deck, listening to the sound of the waves and feeling the soft movement beneath his feet. These moments brought him peace, reminding him that change could be approached with calm acceptance. He read books, wrote letters, and watched the horizon stretch endlessly. The gentle rhythm of the ocean helped soothe the uncertainties he carried with him. Upon arriving in the United States, Einstein was greeted warmly by academics and admirers alike. The atmosphere felt welcoming and open, filled with a curiosity that reminded him of the early days of his career. Though he remained cautious about his long-term plans, he appreciated the sense of safety the new environment provided. He approached each lecture with the same gentle authority that had earned him respect in Europe. His audiences listened attentively, drawn to his sincerity. As Einstein settled into his temporary stay, he began to notice the differences between the atmosphere in America and the one he had left behind. Here, conversations felt lighter, less burdened by political tension. Scientific discussions carried a spirit of optimism, and people expressed admiration for his work with genuine warmth. These experiences offered him emotional relief, allowing him to breathe more freely. He felt grateful for the peaceful environment. Einstein's time in America also introduced him to new opportunities. Universities expressed interest in offering him permanent positions, and colleagues encouraged him to consider staying longer. However, Albert approached these offers with careful consideration. He did not want to make decisions based solely on comfort. He valued his connection to Europe and hoped the situation there might stabilize. For now, he focused on the present, allowing each day to unfold naturally. While abroad, Einstein received letters describing the worsening conditions at home. These messages carried a gentle urgency, encouraging him to extend his stay. Friends expressed concern for his safety and urged him to consider the reality of returning. Einstein read each letter slowly, feeling the emotional weight of their words. Though he remained calm, he understood that the world he had left behind was becoming increasingly unpredictable. As weeks passed, Einstein began to recognize that returning to Europe might no longer be possible. The rising instability grew clearer with each letter and newspaper article. The idea of seeking permanent refuge abroad became less theoretical and more necessary. Einstein approached this realization with quiet acceptance rather than distress. He believed that protecting his safety would allow him to continue contributing to the world through science and humanitarian efforts. Eventually, Albert made the difficult decision to remain in the United States. This choice was guided not by fear, but by clarity. He understood that he could no longer rely on the stability of his home country, and he wished to continue his work in a peaceful environment. The decision marked a turning point in his life, closing one chapter and opening another. He carried the emotional weight of the moment gently, trusting that he had chosen the path with wisdom. Einstein's new life in America unfolded gradually. He established a quiet routine, taught at respected institutions, and built new relationships within the scientific community. Though he missed Europe, he found comfort in the stability of his new home. He appreciated the openness of his colleagues and the curiosity of his students. Each day offered him opportunities to contribute, reflect, and grow. Even as he settled into his new environment, Einstein remained deeply connected to global issues. He continued advocating for peace, encouraging collaboration between nations and speaking softly about the importance of compassion. His voice carried across borders, reminding people that understanding could bridge even the widest divides. He viewed his role as one of gentle leadership, offering clarity without imposing force. Over time, Einstein's decision to remain in America proved vital to his emotional and intellectual well-being. The stability allowed him to continue exploring physics, developing new ideas, and reflecting on the nature of the universe. He found solace in quiet walks, peaceful evenings, and the familiar presence of his violin. These simple routines helped him remain centered in a world still undergoing profound changes. As this chapter drew to its close, Einstein reflected gently on the journey that had brought him here. He recognized the sadness of leaving his homeland, but also the gratitude he felt for his new environment. He understood that life sometimes required difficult decisions, guided not by desire, but by clarity and compassion. This realization helped him settle into his new chapter with peace. And as he stepped softly into the next phase of his life, Albert carried with him the same humility, patience, and quiet hope that had guided him from childhood, trusting that even in a changing world, understanding could still light the path ahead. Albert entered this new chapter with a quiet understanding that his life had shifted permanently. America had become not just a temporary refuge, but a new home where he could continue his work in peace. The early uncertainty he felt upon arrival had softened into a gentle sense of belonging. He appreciated the rhythm of his new surroundings and the calm opportunities they offered. Though he missed Europe, he embraced the stability that now surrounded him. Einstein began settling into his position at the Institute for Advanced Study, a place designed for deep thought and uninterrupted reflection. He admired its quiet atmosphere and the freedom it gave scholars to explore ideas without pressure. Each morning, he walked slowly across the peaceful campus, appreciating the simple beauty of the trees and open spaces. These walks helped him prepare for the day, setting a gentle tone that matched his reflective nature. He cherished the calmness that allowed ideas to unfold naturally. At the Institute, Albert worked alongside other great thinkers who respected his gentle approach to science. They valued his clarity, humility, and dedication to understanding complex questions. Although discussions sometimes grew rigorous, Einstein always contributed with soft-spoken insight. He listened more than he spoke, choosing his words with care. His colleagues found comfort in his presence, appreciating both his brilliance and his kindness. Einstein's curiosity continued to guide his daily routine. Even in his later years, he maintained the same sense of wonder that had shaped his childhood. He explored problems in unified field theory, hoping to connect the fundamental forces of nature within a single framework. This pursuit moved slowly, but he accepted the pace with patience. He believed that understanding unfolded in its own time, and he trusted the quiet persistence that had carried him throughout his life. When Albert taught at Princeton, he approached each lecture with gentle clarity. He explained ideas slowly, ensuring that students felt encouraged rather than overwhelmed. His tone created a classroom atmosphere of warmth and curiosity. Students appreciated his willingness to answer questions thoughtfully, even when the topics were challenging. These interactions reminded Einstein of the joy he found in nurturing young minds. Outside of academic life, Albert grew increasingly aware of the responsibilities that came with his global influence. People sought his perspective on scientific, ethical, and societal issues. He received letters asking for guidance, support, or reassurance. Einstein approached each request with gentleness, responding thoughtfully when time allowed. He understood that his voice carried weight, and he used it carefully. His humility ensured that he never spoke beyond what he believed he could offer with honesty. Einstein became particularly concerned with how science might shape the future of humanity. He believed that knowledge carried both promise and risk, As he considered the rapid technological advancements unfolding around him, he felt a soft responsibility to encourage thoughtful use of these tools. He spoke calmly about the importance of ethics, compassion, and global cooperation. His words came not from fear, but from a desire to help the world grow responsibly. During quiet evenings, Albert reflected on the new questions emerging in physics. He recognized that younger scientists were entering an era of breakthroughs he could not fully predict. This realization did not trouble him. Instead, it filled him with gentle appreciation for the continuity of discovery. He believed that each generation carried its own insights, shaped by new tools and perspectives. His role, he felt, was to guide with humility and encourage wonder. Einstein often spent afternoons reading by large windows that overlooked the Princeton landscape. The soft light made him feel calm and contemplative. In these moments, he considered not just scientific questions, but broader philosophical ones. He wondered about the nature of hope, the resilience of humanity, and the quiet forces that shaped history. These reflections helped him remain emotionally grounded as public attention continued to grow. Even as Einstein became a household name around the world, he held tightly to the simple habits that brought him peace. He enjoyed leisurely walks, peaceful meals, and quiet moments with family. These small rituals anchored him, reminding him that fulfillment came from stillness as much as from accomplishment. His ability to find beauty in simplicity inspired those who knew him personally. Einstein also developed close friendships during his American years. He found comfort in spending time with people who valued kindness and thoughtful conversation. These friendships enriched his life, offering him emotional support without demanding anything in return. He appreciated the gentle warmth these relationships brought him, especially during moments when public attention felt heavy. Though Einstein's unified field theory remained incomplete, he continued pursuing it with quiet determination. The challenge sharpened his mind and strengthened his patience. He often compared the work to walking a long, winding path through a peaceful forest, discovering new clearings along the way. Even when the path led to uncertainty, he felt grateful for the opportunity to explore. This mindset helped him enjoy the process without becoming attached to the outcome. As he grew older, Einstein became increasingly reflective about the nature of time. He understood that life unfolded through a series of soft transitions rather than abrupt changes. Each stage carried lessons, memories, and quiet emotional shifts. He saw his own life as a steady flow shaped by curiosity, humility, and gentle resilience. These reflections brought him peace as he entered the later chapters of his journey. By the time this part of his life neared its close, Einstein had become not just a scientist, but a quiet symbol of hope. His gentle voice offered comfort in a world still recovering from turmoil. He believed that understanding, patience, and compassion could guide humanity toward a more peaceful future. This belief filled him with purpose, even as the pace of scientific progress accelerated around him. And as Albert stepped slowly into the next stage of his life, he carried with him the same soft curiosity that had shaped every moment, ready to guide, reflect, and inspire with a calm vision of what the future might become. Albert entered this part of his journey with a gentle awareness that the world saw him as more than a scientist. He had become a global figure whose thoughts resonated far beyond academia. This realization did not bring pride. It brought responsibility. He understood that people looked to him for guidance during uncertain times. Einstein approached this responsibility with humility, offering soft-spoken reflections whenever he felt he could meaningfully contribute. During these years, Einstein focused increasingly on humanitarian issues. He spoke calmly about the importance of justice, equality, and global cooperation. He believed that scientific progress should serve humanity, not separate it. When he wrote essays or delivered addresses, he chose his words with care, ensuring that his tone remained gentle and encouraging. His message emphasized understanding rather than confrontation, offering a voice of steadiness in a world searching for clarity. As Albert's public influence grew, he became more selective about the causes he supported. He understood that attention could become overwhelming if not managed carefully. He chose to lend his voice to issues where he felt his perspective could bring calm insight. Whether speaking about peace, education, or human dignity, he maintained the same emotional steadiness that defined his character. People found comfort in his sincerity, sensing that he spoke from a place of compassion. Einstein continued nurturing warm friendships with fellow scholars, artists, and thinkers. These relationships offered him emotional grounding and intellectual companionship. He enjoyed sharing meals, discussing philosophy, and reflecting on the nature of creativity. These conversations enriched his worldview, allowing him to appreciate beauty in both scientific and artistic expression. He valued these quiet connections deeply, understanding that friendship added meaning to life in ways no accomplishment could. In his scientific work, Einstein continued exploring ideas related to unified field theory. Though progress came slowly, he remained patient. He approached the problem as a lifelong companion rather than a task to be completed. Some days brought clarity, while others brought uncertainty. Yet he accepted both with gentle openness. He believed that the universe revealed its secrets at its own pace, and he found comfort in this understanding. Einstein's daily routine reflected the calmness he cultivated. He walked the same peaceful routes near the Institute, observing how the seasons changed softly around him. He listened to birdsong in spring, felt the warmth of summer light, and watched autumn leaves drift slowly to the ground. These sensory experiences reminded him that the world moved through cycles of growth, rest, and renewal. He found peace in aligning himself with these rhythms. As he reflected on his future, Einstein grew increasingly interested in the ways science could support education. He believed that nurturing curiosity in children was one of the most important tasks of society. He wrote letters encouraging schools to prioritize imagination and thoughtful exploration. He felt that young people had the potential to shape a better world if given the tools to question and understand. This belief energized him, adding new meaning to his later years. Einstein also became more reflective about his personal journey. He looked back on his life with gentle gratitude, recognizing the challenges, detours, and quiet discoveries that had shaped him. He acknowledged the difficulties he faced, but he held no bitterness. Instead, he saw these experiences as necessary parts of his growth. He felt thankful for the people who had supported him, the ideas that had guided him, and the opportunities that had allowed him to contribute. During moments of solitude, Albert often contemplated the nature of time, not as a physicist, but as a human being. He thought about how memories shaped identity, how moments of stillness held deep emotional significance, and how life unfolded through gradual change. These reflections brought him comfort. They reminded him that every stage of life carried its own meaning, even if its lessons revealed themselves slowly. Einstein's gentle presence continued to inspire younger scientists and students who sought his guidance. He listened to them with patience, encouraging them to follow their curiosity even when the path felt uncertain. He reminded them that great discoveries often emerged from quiet persistence rather than sudden breakthroughs. This perspective reassured those who felt pressured to achieve quickly. His wisdom helped them navigate their own journeys with more peace. In his interactions with the public, Albert continued advocating for understanding. He spoke softly about unity in a world that sometimes felt divided. He encouraged people to approach disagreements with empathy, recognizing that each individual carried their own story. His calm voice became a symbol of thoughtful leadership. Even those who disagreed with his views respected the sincerity behind them. As Einstein entered the later years of his life, He embraced simplicity more fully. He valued rest, reflection, and the quiet comfort of daily routines. He spent peaceful evenings reading or writing letters, and he found joy in playing familiar melodies on his violin. These moments helped him stay connected to the inner stillness he cherished. They reminded him that even as the world continued to change, tranquility could always be found within. Toward the end of this chapter, Einstein felt a soft sense of completion settling over him. He understood that his most influential scientific contributions were behind him, yet he did not feel sadness. Instead, he felt gratitude for the opportunity to explore the universe with humility. He saw his later years not as a conclusion, but as a gentle continuation, a time to reflect, nurture wisdom, and pass on insights to others. And as this chapter came to rest, Albert carried with him a deep, peaceful understanding of life, rooted in compassion, curiosity, and the quiet belief that wisdom grows strongest when shared with kindness. Albert entered the final chapter of his life with a sense of quiet acceptance. He understood that he was moving into a period shaped less by scientific breakthroughs and more by reflection and gentle influence. The urgency of his earlier years had softened into a calm appreciation for the journey he had taken. Each day carried a different rhythm now, slower, steadier, and marked by small moments of peace. He welcomed this transition with humility. His home in Princeton became a sanctuary of stillness. Soft light filtered through the windows each morning, casting warm patterns across the wooden floors. Einstein enjoyed these early hours, using them to read, write letters, or simply sit quietly with a cup of tea. He found comfort in the predictability of these routines. They reminded him that even as years passed, the simple joys of life remained constant. During this time, Einstein received visitors from around the world. Some were young scientists seeking inspiration, while others were individuals who admired his contributions to humanity. He greeted each visitor with kindness, offering warm conversation and thoughtful insights. He never saw himself as someone extraordinary. Instead, he viewed these interactions as an opportunity to encourage curiosity and compassion. His humility made a lasting impression on those who met him. Einstein's scientific work continued, though at a gentler pace. He spent hours contemplating the unified field theory, exploring its possibilities with quiet determination. The work no longer felt urgent. Instead, it felt like a lifelong companion, a puzzle he enjoyed reflecting on even if the answer remained distant. This patient approach reflected his belief that understanding unfolded in its own time. He found peaceful satisfaction in simply thinking. In his later years, Einstein grew increasingly aware of the importance of kindness in the world. He reflected often on the role empathy played in shaping societies. He believed that scientific progress carried meaning only when paired with moral responsibility. This belief shaped the advice he offered to students, leaders, and friends. His words emphasized the value of compassion, reminding people to act not out of fear, but out of understanding. Einstein's appreciation for music deepened as he grew older. He often played his violin in the evenings, allowing the soft notes to fill his home. Music brought him a sense of serenity that balanced the demands of the world outside. He loved the way simple melodies could evoke deep emotions without needing to be explained. These moments held a quiet magic that connected him to memories from his youth. Though Einstein's pace slowed, his curiosity remained vibrant. He read widely, exploring not only scientific papers, but also philosophy, literature, and history. He believed that knowledge came from many sources, and he valued the insights each perspective offered. Reading helped him remain mentally engaged, providing gentle stimulation that enriched his reflections. These quiet hours with books were among his favorites. Einstein frequently walked through the peaceful streets near his Princeton home. These walks allowed him to observe the world at a gentle pace. He watched children play, leaves rustle in the wind, and people go about their daily routines. These simple scenes felt meaningful to him. They reminded him that life unfolded softly, shaped by small moments of connection and awareness. He found beauty in observing these details. As his public influence continued, Einstein remained mindful of the weight his words carried. He responded to global issues with calm insight, offering guidance rooted in compassion. Whether writing about peace, education, or social justice, he maintained a tone that was steady and reassuring. His gentle voice helped people feel supported during times of uncertainty. He saw this role as a quiet responsibility, one he carried with sincerity. Einstein also reflected deeply on the nature of human connection. He cherished letters from friends, former students, and colleagues. These messages reminded him of the many relationships that had shaped his life. He responded thoughtfully, offering warmth and gratitude. He believed that friendship enriched life more than any achievement. This belief influenced how he cared for the people around him. As he looked back on his scientific discoveries, Einstein felt a sense of peaceful detachment. He recognized the importance of his work, but did not dwell on it. To him, the beauty of physics lay in the shared journey of discovery rather than individual achievement. He hoped that future generations would approach science with the same humility and wonder. This hope brought him comfort as he considered the future. Einstein often spent quiet evenings reflecting on the passage of time. He understood that life moved through stages, each carrying its own lessons. His early years taught him curiosity, his middle years taught him persistence, and his later years taught him gratitude. These reflections helped him embrace aging with grace. He saw his life not as a collection of accomplishments, but as a continuous experience of learning. Throughout these years, Einstein continued advocating for peace. He believed that humanity's greatest challenges could only be addressed through cooperation and understanding. He spoke softly about the dangers of division and the importance of empathy. His calm approach offered a stabilizing influence during moments of global tension. He hoped that his message would inspire others long after he was gone. As this chapter neared its close, Einstein found himself surrounded by a sense of quiet fulfillment. He felt grateful for the opportunity to explore the universe, to share his insights, and to witness the beauty of human resilience. His home, filled with books, letters, and familiar objects, felt like a gentle sanctuary. Each item carried memories that reflected the depth of his journey. And as Albert continued walking softly through these elder years, he understood that his greatest contribution was not a single idea, but the gentle way he inspired humanity to look at the world, with curiosity, humility, and compassion. Albert entered the final part of his journey with calm acceptance. He felt the soft pull of time guiding him toward rest, not with urgency, but with a gentle inevitability. His body moved more slowly now, but his mind remained thoughtful and curious. He approached each day as a quiet continuation of the life he had lived, peaceful, reflective, and filled with appreciation for simple moments. He felt no fear, only a deep sense of gratitude. In these last years, Einstein spent much of his time in quiet contemplation. He revisited memories from childhood, recalling the spark of curiosity that first awakened in him when he saw a compass needle move. He reflected on the years at the patent office, the miracle year of discoveries, and the long journey through academic life. These reflections did not feel nostalgic. Instead, they felt like gentle threads that connected each stage of his life into a cohesive whole. Visitors continued to seek Einstein's presence, even as his energy waned. He welcomed them kindly, offering warm conversation and attentive listening. He valued these interactions, understanding that connection brought meaning to life. Though he tired more easily, he remained generous with his time. His visitors often left feeling calmer, touched by the serenity he carried into every moment. His wisdom continued guiding others, even in his final years. Einstein's scientific pursuits gradually shifted from active research to gentle reflection. He no longer felt driven to complete projects. Instead, he enjoyed revisiting old notes, exploring familiar equations, and thinking about the mysteries that still intrigued him. These reflections brought him quiet joy. They reminded him of the lifelong relationship he had nurtured with the universe, one built on wonder, patience, and humility. Music remained a comforting presence in Einstein's life. In the evenings, he would sometimes lift his violin and play soft melodies. The familiar sounds filled his home with warmth. These moments reminded him of earlier years when music had helped him think, feel, and find balance. Now it served as a companion in stillness, offering comfort as he moved through his final days. As time passed, Einstein grew more reflective about the nature of legacy. He understood that people saw him as a monumental figure in science, but he did not view himself that way. He believed that his ideas were simply contributions to a larger collective effort. He hoped that his work would inspire future generations to pursue truth with humility. He wished to be remembered not for fame, but for curiosity, kindness, and perseverance. Einstein often spoke with close friends about the importance of compassion. He believed that humanity's greatest achievements came from understanding rather than force. He encouraged people to listen to one another, to approach differences with empathy, and to remain hopeful even in challenging times. These conversations were soft-spoken and sincere, reflecting the depth of his emotional wisdom. During his final days, Einstein spent long hours resting in his study. Books surrounded him on every shelf, and papers lay neatly arranged on his desk. He found comfort in this environment, knowing it reflected the life he had lived. He felt grateful for the chance to explore the universe with both mind and heart. These quiet hours brought him peace, allowing him to move gently toward the end of his journey. Einstein's passing was peaceful, marked by stillness rather than struggle. He left the world with the same calmness he had carried through life. His final moments were spent in quiet reflection, surrounded by the familiar warmth of his home. The world mourned his loss, but his gentle spirit remained present in the ideas, memories, and wisdom he left behind. His influence continued shaping lives long after he was gone. In the days that followed, people around the world reflected on the legacy Einstein left. They spoke of his scientific brilliance, but also of his humility and compassion. Many found comfort in remembering the gentle way he approached life. His wisdom encouraged them to look at the universe with wonder and to treat one another with kindness. His legacy became not just intellectual, but profoundly human. Einstein's ideas continued inspiring generations of scientists who followed. His theories opened doors to new discoveries that reshaped modern physics. Yet his influence extended beyond science. He became a symbol of intellectual courage, emotional humility, and peaceful leadership. His life reminded people that greatness could be expressed softly, through patience and sincerity. As time passed, the world continued evolving, shaped in part by the insights Einstein had offered. People remembered him as a quiet transformer, a figure whose calm voice had guided them through moments of uncertainty. His story encouraged future generations to embrace curiosity, to pursue truth, and to value understanding above everything else. His memory lived not only in equations, but in hearts. And as this final chapter came to a gentle close, Albert Einstein's journey settled softly into history, a life lived with humility, guided by wonder, and illuminated by the quiet belief that understanding could help humanity move forward with grace.